On my 35th birthday, my parents took me to an exclusive steakhouse just to tell me I was adopted. My mother smiled as she said they only kept me for the state benefits, and now that I was no longer useful, they had already filed the paperwork to cut me out of everything. I did not cry. I simply looked at her and said it was funny, because I found my birth family 6 months ago, and they are sitting 2 tables behind you. When my mother turned around slowly, she came face to face with the exact woman she had spent 10 years trying to impress. My name is Aaliyah, and before I tell you how this night dismantled my entire toxic family, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to build your own empire after being treated like a burden. The clinking of crystal wine glasses and the low hum of jazz filled the mahogany dining room of the Capitol Grill. It was supposed to be a celebration. I sat at the corner of the heavy oak table wearing a tailored emerald silk suit I had bought for myself as a birthday gift. Across from me sat Vivian, the woman I had called mother for 3 decades. She wore her signature pearls and a fixed, perfectly manicured smile that never quite reached her eyes. Next to her was Desmond, my adoptive father, swirling a glass of expensive scotch and checking his phone, ignoring my presence completely. To my right sat my sister Jasmine, the undisputed golden child of the family, and her husband Connor, a smug wealth management broker whose pale skin turned a blotchy pink whenever he drank too much vintage wine. The dinner had been an exhausting parade of passive-aggressive insults. While we ate towers of raw oysters and dry-aged tomahawk steaks, Vivian made a point to critique my natural hair, suggesting I needed to look more professional if I ever wanted to move out of my tiny apartment. She loudly praised Jasmine for recently upgrading to a 5-bedroom house in the suburbs, conveniently omitting that Desmond had paid the entire down payment. I just nodded and chewed my food, letting them talk. The dessert plates had barely been cleared when Vivian reached into her designer handbag and placed a thick cream-colored envelope on the table. She slid it toward me with the tip of her finger. I reached for it, expecting the usual condescending birthday card containing a $50 gift certificate to a store I never visited. Instead, I pulled out a stack of dense legal documents. At the top, printed in bold black ink, were the words, "Petition for Termination of Familial Rights." I stared at the paper, letting the heavy legal jargon register in my mind. "Happy 35th," Vivian said, her voice dripping with the kind of artificial sweetness she usually reserved for the high society charity galas she frequented. "We have legally dissolved your ties to this family, Aaliyah." Desmond finally put his phone face down on the table and leaned forward, folding his hands together. "We spoke with our attorneys last week," he said, his tone entirely transactional, like he was discussing a real estate merger. "You are officially removed from the family trust, the estate planning, and all future inheritance. We are making a clean break." I looked from the legal documents to the 2 people who had raised me. Why, I asked, my voice perfectly steady, despite the heavy silence descending on our table. Vivian took a delicate sip of her Chardonnay. "Let us be honest, Aaliyah. You were always a business decision. We took you in when your biological mother abandoned you because Desmond needed a hardship child to qualify for those initial minority business loans back in the 90s. The state adoption subsidies paid for our first investment properties. We secured a lot of government grants by claiming we were raising an at-risk youth. But those benefits dried up a long time ago. You simply are no longer useful to us." Jasmine let out a sharp laugh, twisting the massive diamond ring on her finger. She leaned against Connor, grinning at me like I was a joke she had finally been given permission to tell. "Do not sit there acting shocked, Aaliyah," she sneered. "You have always been the charity case in this family. You really thought Mom made you wear my old high school prom dresses just to build character. She made you wear my hand-me-downs so she could afford to pay my Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority dues in full. She paid for my spring break trips to Cabo using the extra grocery stipends the state sent for you. You were just a tax write-off that overstayed her welcome." Connor chuckled, wrapping an arm around Jasmine's waist. He signaled the waiter, who promptly approached and placed a black leather billfold on the table. Connor picked it up, glanced at the total, and casually tossed it across the white tablecloth until it hit my plate. "Since you are officially off the Dupree family payroll tonight," Connor said with a smirk, "you can cover the celebration dinner on your way out, right? It is only $4,000. Consider it a thank you for putting a roof over your head all these years. For 35 years, I had swallowed their insults. I had endured the subtle slights, the backhanded compliments, the constant reminders that I did not belong in their pristine, elite social circles. They thought I was still the insecure girl who cried in her room when they excluded me from family vacations. They thought I was struggling financially because I refused to beg them for help after dropping out of the graduate program Desmond had tried to force me into. They did not know that dropping out was the best decision I ever made. They did not know that I had spent the last decade building my own boutique forensic accounting firm from the ground up. I tracked stolen money for a living and I was very good at my job. I looked down at the bill. $4,000 of premium seafood and liquor they had consumed while planning to discard me. I did not scream. I did not shed a single tear. Instead, I reached into my purse, pulled out my wallet, and extracted a solid metal black card. I placed it quietly on top of the receipt. The waiter, who had been awkwardly hovering nearby, picked up the book and scurried away. Connor stared at the spot where my card had just been, his smug expression faltering for a fraction of a second. "How did you get one of those?" Connor asked, his brow furrowing. "I thought you were barely scraping by doing basic bookkeeping for local hair salons." I folded my hands on the table, mirroring Desmond's earlier posture. "I am a forensic accountant, Connor. I track hidden money for federal agencies, and I am doing exceptionally well." I turned my attention back to Vivian, who was staring at me with a mixture of annoyance and confusion. "You said my biological mother abandoned me. You said she was a drug addict who left me in a hospital." Vivian rolled her eyes, adjusting her pearls. "Does it matter? She was a nobody who did not want you. We gave you a life among the best families in this city. You should be on your knees thanking us instead of sitting there with that arrogant look on your face." I smiled, leaning in slightly. "That is the funny thing about being an investigator, Mom. You learn how to dig up records that people try very hard to keep buried." "I found my birth family 6 months ago." Jasmine scoffed, taking another sip of her champagne. "What did you do? Track down some halfway house? Are they waiting outside to ask us for spare change?" "No," I said, keeping my voice dangerously calm. "They are sitting 2 tables behind you." Vivian froze. The wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Desmond frowned, looking over my shoulder. Jasmine and Connor exchanged confused glances. Slowly, Vivian turned her head to look toward the VIP booths at the back of the restaurant. Sitting exactly 2 tables away, bathed in the warm light of a crystal wall, sconce was Josephine Halloway. Josephine was a billionaire real estate mogul, a titan of legacy wealth in our city, and the exact woman Vivian had spent the last 10 years desperately trying to impress in her exclusive social clubs. Vivian had practically begged for an invitation to Josephine's annual charity gala last month and had been swiftly rejected. Josephine stood up from her leather booth. She wore a stunning tailored suit, her posture radiating absolute authority and quiet fury. Her husband Reginald and her son Jamal stood up beside her. Josephine walked slowly toward our table, the sharp click of her heels cutting through the ambient noise of the restaurant. Every patron nearby seemed to hold their breath as she stopped directly behind Vivian's chair. Josephine locked eyes with the woman who had just claimed I was the unwanted child of an addict. "You have exactly 5 seconds to step away from my daughter, Josephine," said her voice ringing through the silent dining room. Josephine's voice cuts through the clinking silver and low jazz of the steakhouse like a perfectly sharpened blade. "You have exactly 5 seconds to step away from my daughter." The entire VIP section goes graveyard still. I stay seated, slowly sipping my sparkling water, letting the heavy, suffocating silence wrap around Vivian's throat. Her perfectly matched lipstick parts in a grotesque circle of pure, unfiltered shock. She worships Josephine Halloway. Vivian has spent the better part of a decade trying to buy her way onto the executive board of the local Jack and Jill chapter, practically begging for an invite to the Halloway Foundation prestigious annual winter gala, and desperately bidding tens of thousands of dollars on silent auction items just to breathe the exact same air as the woman currently standing over our table with lethal grace. Vivian scrambles frantically to recover her composure. Her eyes dart around the room to see which of her high society peers are watching her public unraveling. She immediately attempts to code switch into her practiced syrupy sorority cadence, standing up and aggressively smoothing down the front of her expensive silk dress. She lets out a tight, high-pitched laugh that sounds exactly like breaking glass. Josephine, what an absolute surprise to see you here tonight. There must be some kind of terrible misunderstanding happening right now. I am so incredibly sorry you have to witness this embarrassing display. Josephine does not blink. She does not offer a polite, placating smile. She remains planted like an ancient oak tree, radiating the kind of absolute, undeniable generational authority that new money simply cannot buy. She looks at Vivian the way one might look at a cockroach on a pristine marble floor. Sensing her carefully hoarded social capital evaporating in real time, Vivian pivots straight into her favorite defense mechanism. She leans toward Josephine and lowers her voice into a tone of weaponized pity, attempting to gaslight me right in front of the woman who actually gave birth to me. Aaliyah is having one of her episodes again, Vivian whispers, placing a dramatic manicured hand over her heart, as if she is the ultimate martyr. She is mentally unstable, Josephine. We have been trying to get her professional psychiatric help for years, but she aggressively refuses to take her medication. Lord knows the financial and emotional sacrifices we made for this girl. We took her in out of the sheer goodness of our Christian hearts when her crack addict mother abandoned her in a filthy drug-infested trap house. She creates these elaborate paranoid delusions to cope with her severe abandonment issues. It is a profound tragedy, really, but she is a deeply disturbed individual who needs institutionalization. I do not react. I do not defend myself. The crack addict lie is the exact same fabricated, malicious narrative. Vivian fed me every single time I asked why I did not look like them, why my skin was darker, why my hair curled tighter than Jasmine's. It was Vivian's favorite, most effective weapon to keep me compliant, groveling, and feeling utterly disposable. I let the vicious lie hang in the air, watching the pure disgust ripple across Josephine's flawless, regal face. Before Vivian can spin another web of toxic deceit, Reginald Halloway moves out of the shadow of the velvet booth. He is a tall, impeccably tailored man, radiating the kind of fierce, protective black father energy I used to watch on television and pretend was mine. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to scream to command the room. He steps forward and drops a thick, heavy manila folder right on top of Connor's half-eaten Wagyu ribeye. Peppercorn sauce and grease immediately stain the bottom of the paper, but Reginald does not care. The impact of the heavy folder sends a jolt through the table, rattling the silverware. My wife never abandoned her, Reginald says, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that echoes off the mahogany walls. You bribed a corrupt judge at a private, unregulated agency to forge the abandonment paperwork. You needed a hardship child to qualify for those initial minority business development loans back in the 90s. You stole our baby to fund your real estate portfolio, and you have spent 35 years hiding behind a purchased reputation. The whispers from the surrounding tables ignite like a wildfire. The city's politicians, tech executives, and elite socialites are leaning in, hanging on to every single damning word. The carefully constructed, flawless facade of the Dupree family is disintegrating right next to the dessert cart. I can see the precise moment the realization hits Vivian that her social climbing days are permanently over. Desmond turns a mottled, dangerous shade of violet. The thick veins in his neck bulge aggressively against his starched white collar. His arrogance, usually his impenetrable shield, rapidly mutates into unhinged, sweaty panic. He stands up so fast his heavy dining chair tips over and crashes loudly onto the hardwood floor. He points a thick, shaking finger directly at Reginald's chest. This is absolute slander, Desmond barks, spit flying from his trembling lips. I am a pillar of this community. I know the chief of police personally, and I will have you arrested for harassment and defamation. Manager, get over here and call security right now. Remove these people from my table immediately. The restaurant manager hovers anxiously near the climate-controlled wine cellar, utterly terrified to intervene in a loud dispute involving the city's most powerful billionaires. Desmond looks around wildly, realizing his hollow threats are landing on deaf ears. His usual bullying bluster is entirely useless against the immovable mountain of the Holloway family. Smelling the blood in the water and realizing his own luxurious lifestyle is suddenly under severe attack, Connor steps around the table. Jasmine's white husband puffs out his chest, running an agitated hand through his gelled blonde hair. He tries to use his corporate finance intimidation tactics, relying on the exact same condescending, aggressive tone he uses to bully junior analysts at his downtown wealth management firm. He steps directly into my personal space, attempting to cast a physically threatening shadow over my seated form. Listen to me very carefully. Connor sneers, his hot breath reeking of expensive scotch and sudden sharp desperation. I do not care who these people think they are, or what fake papers they printed off the internet. You have completely lost your mind, Aaliyah. I will personally sue you for defamation, emotional distress, and corporate sabotage. I will bury you in so much litigation you will be living out of a cardboard box by Christmas. I will completely ruin your little boutique accounting business. You will never audit another tax return in this city again. You should be begging us on your hands and knees for a basic severance package, you ungrateful charity case. I place my sparkling water down on the table, ensuring the base of the glass rests perfectly flat against the white linen. I trace the rim of the glass with my index finger, completely unbothered by the venom spilling from his mouth. I look up at Connor, meeting his pale, frantic eyes with a stare so icy and unyielding, he actually stops breathing for a full second. I do not raise my voice, but the absolute, undeniable certainty in my tone makes him take an involuntary half-step back away from me. You should really check your firm's internal servers. Connor, I say smoothly, leaning back into the plush leather of the dining chair. I am not just a local tax preparer managing strip mall accounts. As a senior forensic accountant, I was officially contracted by the Securities and Exchange Commission last week to audit your specific branch. I found the shell companies. I traced the phantom ledgers you routed through the Cayman Islands. Because I froze all of Desmond's offshore accounts an hour ago. Connor lets out a short, breathy laugh that sounds more like a cough. He runs a hand through his gelled blonde hair, looking around the table as if waiting for the rest of them to join in on the joke. He loosens his expensive silk tie. You are absolutely delusional, Aaliyah. He says it loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear, trying to perform his usual role of the rational white knight stepping in to handle the hysterical black woman. You do not have the clearance, the authority, or the basic intellect to freeze a commercial checking account, let alone a high-yield offshore portfolio. My firm manages assets for half the state legislature. We have firewalls you could not even comprehend. I do not blink. I just watch him. The silence stretches out heavy and suffocating. Connor shifts his weight, his bravado slipping slightly under the collective stare of my birth family. With a dismissive scoff, he reaches into the breast pocket of his tailored suit jacket and pulls out his phone. He taps the screen to open his proprietary wealth management app, intending to show the table his robust portfolio and prove me wrong. The glow of this screen illuminates his pale face in the dim restaurant lighting. I watch the exact second his reality shatters. The arrogant smirk melts off his face, replaced by a slack-jawed expression of pure, unfiltered terror. The screen does not show his millions. The screen flashes a solid block of red with bold white text that reads, "Account frozen pending federal inquiry." Connor taps the screen frantically, his thumb jabbing at the glass. He closes the app and reopens it. He refreshes the browser. The red screen remains. A bead of sweat forms at his temple and rolls down the side of his face. He looks up at me, his breathing suddenly shallow and rapid. "What did you do?" Connor breathes the words scraping against his throat. I lean forward, resting my forearms on the white tablecloth. As a senior forensic accountant, I was officially contracted by the Securities and Exchange Commission last week to audit your specific branch. I say, my voice calm and measured. The SEC had noticed some irregularities in your quarterly filings, but they could not quite piece together the methodology. They needed someone who understands exactly how desperate, greedy men hide their tracks. They needed me. I keep my eyes locked on his, watching him mentally calculate the years in federal prison currently waiting for him. It took me less than 48 hours to bypass your so-called firewalls, Connor. I found the shell companies registered in Delaware. I traced the phantom ledgers you routed through the Cayman Islands. I saw every single wire transfer you made to funnel your client's money into Desmond's fraudulent real estate development accounts. Jasmine, who has been staring at her husband in growing horror, finally speaks up. Connor, what is she talking about? Jasmine demands, her voice rising in pitch. Tell her she is lying. Tell her our money is fine. I turn my attention to the sister who made my entire childhood a living nightmare. He cannot tell you that, Jasmine, because there is no money left, I say. For the last 5 years, you loved to mock my lifestyle. You let everyone at your country club luncheons know that your adopted sister drove a beat-up 2008 Honda Civic. You laughed when I wore thrift store suits to my entry-level accounting jobs. You told your friends I was just a financially illiterate dropout who could not hustle. Jasmine shrinks back slightly, but her entitlement keeps her defensive. You are financially illiterate, she snaps. You always have been. I shake my head. No, Jasmine. I was paying off the massive debts you and Desmond racked up in my name. While you were making fun of my Honda, you and Connor were busy buying a brand new Porsche Panamera. You claimed it was a bonus from his firm. It was not. Connor purchased that car using a line of credit opened with my stolen social security number. You funded your lavish destination wedding in Santorini by draining the remnants of the state adoption subsidies Desmond had hidden in a secondary trust meant for my education. Every designer bag you carry, every luxury vacation you post on social media, every ounce of your fabulous lifestyle was financed by my stolen identity. The color completely drains from Jasmine's face. She turns to Connor, her acrylic nails digging into his expensive suit jacket. Is that true? She shrieks, her voice cracking, completely shattering the elegant atmosphere of the steakhouse. Connor, look at me. Is the money gone? Did you use her name? Connor cannot even look at his wife. He is staring at the table, completely paralyzed by the realization that his life is over. Jasmine loses whatever shred of high society decorum she had left. She shoves Connor hard in the chest. Fix it. She screams, hitting him again. Call your boss. Call the bank. You fix this right now, you useless coward. I am not losing my house because you were too stupid to cover your tracks. The sheer volume of Jasmine's meltdown causes a waiter to drop a tray of water glasses in the distance. The shattering glass echoes through the dining room, but no one looks away from our table. Vivian is sitting completely frozen, her hands covering her mouth as she watches her golden child unravel in public. Desmond, deciding he needs to seize control of the narrative, pushes his chair back and stands up. He ignores the weeping mess of his daughter and the catatonic state of his son-in-law. He focuses his rage entirely on Reginald Halloway, who is still standing next to my chair with the manila folder of forged adoption documents. Give me that folder right now, Desmond demands, his voice dropping into a guttural growl. You have absolutely no right to bring fabricated documents into a public place and harass my family. I am leaving with my daughter and that file. Desmond reaches across the table, his large hand lunging toward the manila folder. He does not even make it halfway. Jamal Halloway, my biological brother, moves with a speed and precision that is genuinely terrifying. He steps forward and intercepts Desmond's arm, grabbing him by the wrist. Jamal is a corporate litigator who spends his days dismantling billionaires in courtrooms, but right now his grip is purely physical. He twists Desmond's wrist just enough to lock his arm in place, applying a steady, agonizing pressure. Desmond lets out a sharp gasp of pain, his knees buckling slightly as Jamal forces his arm downward onto the table. The ice in the remaining water glasses rattles from the impact. Jamal leans in incredibly close to Desmond's face. His voice is barely a whisper, but it carries the lethal promise of absolute destruction. Touch my family again. Jamal says the words slicing through the air like a scalpel, and I will not wait for the SEC to finish their paperwork. I will have you arrested for kidnapping right here on this floor. Desmond grimaces, trying to pull his arm back, but Jamal holds him effortlessly. You think you are powerful because you bully women in suburbs, Jamal continues, keeping his voice low. You are nothing but a common thief in a cheap suit. You stole my sister. You exploited her for 35 years to line your own pockets. You let your spoiled daughter use her like a credit card. And now you want to demand respect. Jamal releases Desmond's wrist with a disgusted shove. Desmond stumbles backward, crashing into the edge of a serving cart. He rubs his wrist, breathing heavily, his eyes darting around the room looking for anyone to intervene on his behalf. "You cannot do this to me," Desmond stutters, trying to salvage his pride. "I am a prominent figure in this city. I have powerful friends." Jamal adjusts his jacket cuffs, completely unbothered by Desmond's pathetic posturing. He raises his hand and casually points toward a large, secluded corner booth at the far end of the restaurant. "Do you mean friends like him?" Jamal asks. Desmond turns to follow Jamal's finger. Sitting in the corner booth, holding a glass of red wine and watching the entire confrontation with an expression of profound disappointment, is the mayor of the city. The mayor is a man Desmond has spent millions in campaign contributions trying to court, a man Desmond claims is a close personal friend. The mayor slowly sets his wineglass down. He does not nod. He does not smile. He simply turns his back to Desmond, signaling a complete and total social execution. Desmond stares at the mayor, his shoulders slumping as the reality of his situation crashes down on him. The social capital he spent decades building, the political connections he bought with stolen money, the elite status Vivian guarded with her life, it is all gone, erased in less than 10 minutes. Josephine Holloway steps forward again, her presence commanding the remaining space. She looks down at Vivian, who is still sitting at the table, shaking and weeping silently. "You told everyone she was a charity case," Josephine says, her voice resonating with maternal fury. "You told the world she was a burden. You used my daughter to buy your way into rooms where you never belonged. Well, Vivian, your lease is up. The eviction notice has been served." I stand up from my chair, picking up my purse. I do not look at Jasmine, who is still sobbing into her hands. I do not look at Connor, who is staring blankly at his frozen phone screen. I look at Desmond and Vivian, the people who stole my life to build theirs. "I told you I was not crying when you handed me those disownment papers," I say quietly. "I was just calculating the interest on what you owe me." I turn my back on them and walk toward the exit, flanked by my real family. The restaurant parts for us like the Red Sea. I leave the duplicate copy of the $4,000 dinner bill sitting on the table right next to my black card. They can figure out how to pay it themselves. The heavy silence in the Capitol grill is broken by the crisp sound of dress shoes against the polished hardwood floor. The general manager, a sharply dressed man named Rossi, steps out from the shadows of the wine cellar. He is flanked by two massive security guards in dark suits. Desmond immediately puffs out his chest, assuming the cavalry has arrived to rescue his bruised ego. He points a shaking finger at Jamal and Reginald, his voice loud and obnoxious. "It is about time," Desmond barks. "I want these people removed from my table immediately. They are harassing my family and causing a massive disturbance. I am a platinum member here, Rossi. Have them thrown out onto the street before I call my contacts at the precinct." Rossi does not even glance at the Holloway family. He stops directly next to Desmond's overturned chair and folds his hands behind his back. His expression is completely devoid of the usual sycophantic warmth he reserves for his wealthy patrons. "I am afraid you misunderstand the situation, Mr. Dupree," Rossi says, his voice carrying clearly across the dining room. "You and your party are the ones causing the disturbance. Your behavior toward Mrs. Holloway and her daughter is completely unacceptable in this establishment. I am going to have to ask you to settle your bill and leave the premises immediately." Desmond's mouth drops open. He looks from Rossi to the security guards, and then over to the corner booth, where the mayor is now actively ignoring him, pretending to be engrossed in a conversation with his chief of staff. The color drains completely from Desmond's face. He is a man who operates entirely on intimidation and perceived social power, and right now he is entirely powerless. "You cannot do this," Desmond stammers, his bluster evaporating into genuine panic. "Do you know how much money I spend in this restaurant? Do you know who I am?" Rossi remains perfectly still. "I know exactly who you are, Mr. Dupree. And I also know that Mrs. Holloway practically owns the commercial real estate block this building sits on. But even if she did not, we do not tolerate patrons screaming at other guests. Please gather your belongings. Security will escort you to the valet." The reality of the public humiliation finally crashes over Vivian. The elite women she plays tennis with, the wives of the city councilmen, the prominent figures of her social circles, they are all watching her get publicly ejected from the most exclusive restaurant in the city. The social death sentence is absolute and irreversible. Realizing that anger and entitlement have failed, Vivian pivots instantly to her most practiced weapon. She plays the victim. Tears immediately well up in Vivian's eyes. Her bottom lip trembles perfectly on cue. She reaches out, clasping her hands together in a theatrical display of maternal heartbreak. She completely ignores Rossi and the security guards, turning her tear-streaked face toward me, hoping to manipulate the narrative for the watching crowd. Alia, how can you do this to us? Vivian cries, her voice cracking with manufactured devastation. After everything we gave you. We took you in when you had absolutely nothing. We gave you a family. We gave you our name. We put a solid roof over your head and kept you safe from the streets. You are letting these strangers poison your mind against the people who loved you. I stop walking. I turn around slowly, letting my gaze sweep over the pathetic display. Jasmine is shrinking back into the leather booth, trying to hide her face from the onlookers. Connor is still staring at his frozen bank accounts on his phone, completely unresponsive to the chaos around him. I look directly into Vivian's weeping eyes. I do not raise my voice, but I make sure my words slice through the quiet dining room with absolute precision. You gave me a roof, you paid for using my stolen adoption subsidies, I say, the cold facts hanging heavy in the air. You took the checks the state sent for my care and funneled them straight into Desmond's failing real estate ventures, while you made me pack my belongings in garbage bags every time we moved. But that was not enough for you. You could not just steal my childhood. You had to steal my future too. Vivian's fake tears stop flowing. She takes a shaky breath, her eyes darting nervously toward Josephine and Reginald, who are watching the execution with fierce pride. I step closer to the table, my voice steady and unyielding. When I was 18, I tried to lease my first apartment so I could move out and get away from your constant abuse. That was the day I pulled my credit report and found $75,000 in default. You paid for Jasmine's Howard University tuition using credit cards you illegally opened in my name. You funded her entire HBCU experience, her textbooks, her designer clothes, her luxury dorm room, all while destroying my credit score. Jasmine gasps, loudly covering her mouth with her hand. She looks around frantically, realizing that her pristine high society image is currently being shredded in front of the exact people she spends all her energy trying to impress. I spent 3 years working double shifts to pay off the debt you dumped on me. I continue, refusing to break eye contact with Vivian. I spent 3 years cleaning up your criminal mess so I could afford to finish my own accounting degree. I have every single receipt, Vivian. I have the forged signature pages. I have the routing numbers, so do not stand there and cry about putting a roof over my head. You financed your biological daughter's entire life using my identity as your personal slush fund. Vivian opens her mouth to speak, but nothing comes out. She looks completely hollowed out, stripped of every lie she ever told to build her fraudulent empire. Desmond is glaring at the floor, refusing to look at anyone. The security guards step forward, placing their hands firmly on Desmond and Connor's shoulders, indicating that their time is officially up. Let us go, Alia, Josephine says softly, stepping up beside me and placing a warm, grounding hand on my shoulder. The air is entirely too toxic in here. I nod, turning my back on the people who kept me captive for 35 years. I walk toward the grand entrance of the restaurant, flanked by the family I was always supposed to have. Reginald walks slightly ahead of us, his broad shoulders clearing a path through the wealthy patrons who quickly step aside to let us pass. Jamal walks right beside me, matching my pace, his presence a silent promise of absolute protection. For the first time in my entire life, I do not feel small. I do not feel like an awkward outsider desperately trying to contort myself to fit into a space where I am not wanted. I feel powerful. I feel seen. I feel completely untouchable. We step out of the heavy double doors and the cool evening air hits my face, feeling incredibly refreshing after the stifling atmosphere of the steakhouse. The valet is already pulling a sleek black Maybach up to the curb. The polished exterior reflects the glowing streetlights. Reginald tips the valet generously and opens the rear passenger door for Josephine and me. As I slide into the soft leather seat, my phone vibrates sharply inside my clutch. I pull it out, assuming it might be a message from my firm regarding the ongoing federal audit. Instead, the screen illuminates with a text message from an unsaved number. I do not recognize the digits, but I recognize the absolute desperation dripping from the words. It is Connor. He must have pulled my private cell phone number from his firm's hacked database before his access was completely revoked. The text message is a frantic wall of text, entirely devoid of the arrogant finance bro swagger he was throwing around just 10 minutes ago. Please, Alia, you have to listen to me. I had nothing to do with the credit card fraud. Desmond forced me to route those offshore accounts through my branch. He threatened to cut Jasmine out of his will if I did not help him hide the real estate kickbacks. I swear to God, I will tell you everything he did. I will give you the hidden ledgers, the shell company names, the offshore account passwords. I will testify against him and Vivian in federal court. I will give you everything you need to lock them up for the rest of their lives. Just please unfreeze my personal accounts. I have zero access to cash. Jasmine is losing her mind, and if my partners find out about the SEC audit, I am facing 20 years. Please, I am begging you, we are family. I stare at the glowing screen, reading the pathetic plea over and over again. Connor, the man who just tried to force me to pay a $4,000 dinner bill while he was actively hiding stolen millions, is now begging me for his life. The golden child's perfect white knight has completely folded at the first sign of real consequence. He is ready to burn his own father-in-law to the ground just to save his own skin. Jamal slides into the front passenger seat and glances back at me. Everything all right? He asks, noticing the glow of my phone, illuminating my face in the dark cabin of the car. I lock my screen and drop the phone back into my purse, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across my face. Everything is perfectly fine, I reply, looking out the tinted window as the Maybach glides away from the curb, leaving the restaurant and my past far behind us. The rats are already turning on each other. Josephine reaches over and takes my hand, squeezing it gently. She does not ask questions. She just sits beside me, radiating a quiet, fierce love that I am still learning how to accept. The financial trap I set months ago has officially snapped shut. The disownment papers Vivian shoved in my face were just the match that lit the fuse. Now the real destruction begins. The morning sun streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown office, illuminating the pristine white marble floors and the sleek modern artwork hanging on the walls. My boutique forensic accounting firm occupies the entire 14th floor of a high-rise building overlooking the river. It is a space I built from the ground up, brick by brick, with zero financial assistance from the people who raised me. The quiet hum of productivity and the scent of fresh espresso usually bring me a profound sense of peace. Today my office serves as a fortress. I am sitting behind my heavy mahogany desk, reviewing the encrypted federal files the SEC sent over late last night. The data trails are staggering. Desmond and Connor were not just sloppy. They were arrogantly careless, operating under the delusion that their wealth insulated them from basic federal oversight. The intercom on my desk buzzes sharply, cutting through the quiet. My receptionist Brenda speaks, her voice tight with genuine alarm. Aaliyah, there is a man in the lobby pacing erratically. He bypassed security downstairs and is aggressively demanding to see you right now. I am going to call building security. Before I can even press the button to agree, the heavy frosted glass door to my private office violently swings open. Connor bursts into the room. The polished, arrogant wealth management broker from last night is completely gone. In his place stands a frantic, sweating, hollowed-out shell of a man. His expensive tailored suit is heavily wrinkled and stained as if he slept in his car. His silk tie is missing, and the top 3 buttons of his shirt are ripped open. His eyes are bloodshot with dark, heavy bags dragging down his pale skin. He reeks of stale liquor and raw, absolute terror. He looks exactly like a man who spent the entire night watching his multi-million-dollar empire evaporate into thin air. Close the door, Connor. I say, my voice dangerously calm. I do not look up from the financial reports spread across my desk. He slams the glass door shut behind him and practically lunges across the room, gripping the back of the leather guest chair to steady his trembling hands. You have to listen to me, Aaliyah, he breathes the words, scraping harshly against his throat. You have no idea what Desmond is actually capable of doing. You have to let me explain. I slowly fold my hands together, resting them on the pristine surface of my desk. I have all the bank ledgers right here in front of me, Connor, I say, gesturing to the thick stacks of paper. I highly doubt there is anything you can tell me that the federal government does not already know. Connor shakes his head frantically, drops of sweat flying from his forehead. No, you do not understand the full scope of it. It was not just the credit cards for Jasmine. It was not just the Porsche. Desmond took your social security number the literal day you turned 18. He used your stolen identity to establish 3 separate limited liability companies registered in Delaware. He used those ghost companies to hold millions of dollars in illegal real estate kickbacks from corrupt city contractors. He was buying up foreclosed properties in low-income neighborhoods using your name so the city council would not trace the conflict of interest back to his primary firm. I remained perfectly still, letting the sheer magnitude of the betrayal wash over me. Desmond had turned me into a phantom real estate mogul, a walking liability carrying the weight of his federal crimes. I did not want to do it. Connor rambles, his voice pitching higher as he desperately tries to throw his father-in-law under the bus to save himself. Desmond forced me to route the dirty money through my firm. I swear to you, Aaliyah, I had no choice. He threatened to cut Jasmine out of the family trust completely if I did not play ball. He said he would personally ruin my career and have me blacklisted from every financial institution in the state. I was just trying to protect my wife. I am a victim of his manipulation too. You have to believe me. I stand up slowly, smoothing down the front of my tailored emerald skirt. I walk around the edge of my desk, stopping just a few feet away from his trembling frame. A victim, Connor. I repeat the word, tasting like ash in my mouth. Are you seriously standing in my office, dripping in sweat, trying to play the innocent victim right now? He nods eagerly, his eyes wide with pathetic hope. Yes, I can help you take him down. I will testify against him in federal court. I will give you the hidden ledgers, the shell company names, the offshore account passwords. I will give you everything you need to lock Desmond and Vivian up for the rest of their lives. Just please unfreeze my personal accounts. I need cash to hire a criminal defense attorney. Jasmine is losing her mind, and if my partners officially find out about the SEC audit, I am facing 20 years minimum. Please, Aaliyah, I am begging you. I tilt my head, studying him with utter disgust. You did not look like a victim last night at the Capitol Grill. I say, my tone dropping to a lethal whisper. You looked incredibly comfortable sitting there drinking premium vintage scotch paid for with my stolen identity. You looked absolutely thrilled when you casually tossed a $4,000 dinner bill onto my plate and mocked my boutique accounting business. You reveled in my public humiliation. You smiled while Vivian told me my birth mother was a crack addict. You enjoyed every single second of that power trip because you thought I was small and defenseless. Connor opens his mouth to speak, but I hold up a single finger, silencing him immediately. I do not need your testimony, Connor. I state clearly. The Securities and Exchange Commission already has the phantom ledgers. I decrypted the wire transfer logs at 4 o'clock this morning. The federal government does not negotiate with cowardly middlemen who get caught with their hands deep in the cookie jar. You sat at that table and tried to hand me a dinner bill while you were actively siphoning millions of dollars in my name. You are going down with them, Connor. I am not unfreezing a single cent. The pathetic, desperate hope completely drains from Connor's face. The realization that I am not going to save him hits him like a physical blow. The panic in his bloodshot eyes quickly shifts into a cornered, malicious desperation. He realizes begging will not work, so he instantly resorts to the only tactic his toxic family knows. You think you have won because you found some rich birth parents. Connor sneers, his upper lip curling into a vicious snarl. You think you are untouchable now, sitting in your fancy little office. But you do not know Jasmine. You do not know how deeply vicious my wife can be when she is backed into a corner. She will destroy you, Aaliyah. I raise an eyebrow, completely unbothered by his sudden shift in tone. Is that right? Connor takes a step closer, slamming his hands down onto my mahogany desk. Jasmine is calling her contacts at the local news networks right now. He spits the words out with vindictive pleasure. You know that youth literacy nonprofit she runs, the charity she uses to boost her philanthropic socialite status. She is going to the press today to tell them you embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars from her foundation. She spent the entire night forging financial statements with your signature on them, ready to hand over to the investigative reporters. I stare at him, letting him lay out their entire pathetic strategy. She is going to spin this entire narrative, Connor continues, his chest heaving. She will go on television and cry. She will tell the world you are a disgruntled, mentally unstable adopted sister trying to extort your loving, generous family. She will play the heartbroken victim perfectly. The media will eat it up. She will completely ruin your professional reputation before the SEC even files their first indictment against me. You will be radioactive. No one will ever hire you again. I do not even get a chance to process the sheer audacity of Jasmine's latest criminal scheme before the heavy glass door to my office swings open for the second time this morning. Jamal Holloway steps into the room. He looks absolutely flawless in a sharp, tailored charcoal suit, holding a sleek leather briefcase in one hand and a thick stack of legal documents in the other. He moves with the fluid, confident grace of a man who destroys corporate titans for a living. He stops next to my desk, looking at Connor with a bright, predatory smile that does not reach his cold, calculating eyes. "Let her go to the press," Jamal says smoothly, his deep voice filling the room with absolute authority, "because I am holding a federal cease and desist." The absolute silence in my office following Jamal's arrival is a heavy, suffocating blanket that Connor clearly cannot breathe through. He takes one look at the federal cease and desist order in Jamal's hand, grabs his briefcase, and practically sprints out of the glass doors without saying another word. The swift legal execution of his pathetic blackmail attempt is deeply satisfying, but I know the Dupree family playbook entirely too well to think the war is over. Connor is a coward who folds under pressure. Jasmine, on the other hand, is a narcissist who violently lashes out whenever her perfect reflection is threatened. I know she will come for me. I just do not expect her to bypass my building's security to do it. It happens at 8 o'clock that evening. I am standing in the kitchen of my downtown penthouse, pouring a glass of crisp white wine and enjoying the panoramic view of the glittering city skyline. The penthouse is my sanctuary. It is a sprawling 4,000 square foot masterpiece of modern architecture, featuring imported Italian marble floors, custom velvet furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the river. I bought it 3 years ago, completely in cash, using the profits from my first major federal forensic contract. My adoptive family has spent the last decade believing I live in a cramped studio apartment, struggling to make ends meet, because that is the narrative that makes them feel superior. They have absolutely no idea what my reality actually looks like. The private elevator that opens directly into my foyer chimes with a soft melodic ping. I frown, setting my wine glass down on the quartz kitchen island. Security is supposed to call my private line before authorizing access to my floor. The heavy steel elevator doors slide open, and Jasmine storms into my foyer like a hurricane of pure, unhinged panic. She looks absolutely deranged. Her usually flawless blonde highlighted weave is frizzy and sticking to her forehead. Her expensive silk blouse is wrinkled, and her mascara is slightly smudged beneath her eyes. She is clutching a handful of useless premium credit cards in her shaking fist. I find out later that she bribed the downstairs concierge with her diamond tennis bracelet just to get access to my floor, because every single piece of plastic in her designer wallet declined at a high-end luxury boutique this afternoon. Her public humiliation drove her straight into a manic frenzy. Jasmine stops dead in her tracks the moment her heels hit the marble floor of my foyer. Her frantic breathing hitches in her throat as her eyes sweep over the sheer magnitude of my home. She looks at the towering modern art sculptures, the massive wraparound terrace, and the undeniable displays of immense wealth surrounding her. The cognitive dissonance physically short-circuits her brain. She has spent her entire life convincing herself that I am a pathetic charity case. Standing in the middle of a penthouse that costs more than her husband's entire wealth management portfolio completely shatters her fragile reality. "How are you paying for this?" Jasmine breathes, her voice trembling with a mixture of shock and instant bubbling jealousy. "Who is paying for this, Aaliyah? Are you renting this? This has to be a rental." I do not move from the kitchen island. I cross my arms over my chest and watch her unravel. "You are trespassing, Jasmine. I suggest you turn around and get back in that elevator before I have building security forcibly remove you from the premises." My calm dismissal is the exact trigger she needs to completely lose her mind. Jasmine lets out a guttural scream of absolute rage. She throws the handful of deactivated platinum credit cards onto the floor where they scatter across the marble like useless pieces of trash. She marches into my living room, her eyes darting around wildly, looking for something to destroy. Her gaze lands on a custom hand-blown glass centerpiece resting on the main coffee table. Before I can say a word, she grabs the heavy glass sculpture and hurls it directly at the hardwood floor. The centerpiece shatters into 1,000 glittering pieces, the sharp crack echoing loudly through the massive open space of the penthouse. "You are ruining my life," Jasmine screams, pointing a shaking manicured finger at my face. "You froze my accounts. You locked me out of my own money. I went to buy a dress today, and my card declined in front of the entire store. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? Do you know who I am? I am a prominent socialite. You are treating me like a common criminal." I look at the shattered glass on my floor and then back up at the woman who made my childhood a living hell. "You are a criminal, Jasmine," I say, keeping my voice dangerously level. "Your entire life is funded by corporate theft and stolen identity fraud. The only difference is that today the federal government finally turned off the faucet." Jasmine completely ignores my words, consumed entirely by her own victimhood. She steps over the broken glass, marching toward the kitchen island, her face twisted into a vicious, ugly sneer. "You owe us, Alia!" she shrieks, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "You owe this family everything. Mom and Dad loved you. We took you out of the gutter. We gave you a life. We gave you a name. You would be absolutely nothing without us. You are just doing this because you are bitterly jealous. You have always been jealous of me. You are jealous because I am the pretty one. I am the successful one. I am the one who married well. And you are just the ugly, awkward dropout who never belonged with us. You are a pathetic, jealous loser who had to go crying to some fake birth parents just to get attention." I do not flinch. I do not raise my voice. I do not give her the satisfaction of seeing me react to the exact same juvenile insults she used to hurl at me when we were teenagers. She is desperately trying to pull me back into the dynamic of the frightened, insecure adopted sister, but that version of me died a very long time ago. I lean forward, resting my hands on the cool quartz counter. I stare directly into her frantic, bloodshot eyes. "You stole my college tuition to fund your failed lifestyle brand, Jasmine," I say, my voice dropping into a cold, surgical precision. "Do not stand in my home and talk to me about success. When you were 24 years old, you convinced Desmond to drain the $75,000 educational trust fund the state mandated for my college tuition. You took my future, and you blew it on a vanity project. You launched that pathetic luxury candle and wellness company that produced absolutely nothing but staged Instagram photos and lavish launch parties. You spent my tuition money on custom packaging and paid celebrity endorsements. Your company went bankrupt in 8 months because you have zero business acumen. You have never worked a hard day in your entire miserable life." Jasmine steps back, her mouth opening and closing as the brutal reality of her past is thrown directly in her face. "You are a 32-year-old woman throwing a violent tantrum in my living room because your stolen allowance finally ran out." I continue, taking a slow, deliberate step around the kitchen island toward her. "You are not a socialite, Jasmine. You are a parasite. You have fed off my identity, your father's corruption, and your husband's fraud. And now that the host is dead, you have absolutely no idea how to survive." For a second, I see genuine terror flash in her eyes. The unyielding truth of my words strips away her arrogance, leaving nothing but a scared, powerless woman who realizes her entire existence has been a complete facade. But true to her toxic nature, Jasmine cannot accept defeat. If she is going down, she is determined to drag me into the dirt with her. Her posture stiffens, and a malicious, wicked smile slowly spreads across her face. The panic fades, replaced by the smug, calculating cruelty she usually wears like armor. "You think you are so smart, Aaliyah," Jasmine says, her voice dropping to a harsh, mocking whisper. "You think you can just destroy my family and walk away untouched. You think you are going to put on a fancy dress this weekend and rub elbows with the city's elite. I narrow my eyes slightly, watching her play her final desperate hand. I know all about your special little invitation to the Black Excellence Entrepreneur Gala this Saturday, Jasmine sneers, crossing her arms over her chest. I know you were nominated for an award. I know how badly you want to be accepted by that community. So I made a few phone calls today. I called the steering committee and the event organizers. Jasmine takes a step closer, her eyes shining with vindictive triumph. I told them that your boutique accounting firm is currently under active federal investigation. I told them that you embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars from my youth literacy nonprofit, and that the SEC is preparing to indict you for corporate fraud. I sent them forged financial statements with your digital signature plastered all over them. I told the press, too. They are running the story tomorrow morning. By the time you wake up, the gala organizers are going to publicly rescind your invitation and revoke your nomination. You are going to be a total pariah. No one in this city will ever associate with you again. I am going to ruin your professional reputation permanently. Jasmine stands there breathing heavily, waiting for me to shatter. She is waiting for the tears. She is waiting for me to beg her to call the organizers and retract the story. She wants to see me break the way she is breaking. I reach into my pocket and pull out my phone. I tap the screen to check the time. It is exactly 8:15 in the evening. I look back up at Jasmine and a slow, genuine smile spreads across my face. It is a smile of absolute unbothered serenity. The kind of smile you only have when you are playing a game of chess, and you already know you hold the winning piece. Jasmine's triumphant smirk falters. Her brow furrows in deep confusion. "Why are you smiling?" She snaps, her voice laced with sudden uncertainty. "I just told you I ruined your career." I slip my phone back into my pocket and cross my arms, mirroring her stance. "Is that right?" I ask softly. Jasmine opens her mouth to scream another threat, but the words die in her throat. The heavy steel elevator doors in the foyer chime and slide open for the second time tonight. Jasmine spins around, startled by the sudden intrusion. Stepping out of the private elevator, flanked by two massive men in dark suits, is my biological mother, Josephine Halloway. She is wearing a stunning emerald green trench coat, her posture radiating absolute authority and lethal grace. She does not look at Jasmine. She does not even acknowledge her presence in the room. Josephine walks straight past my terrified adoptive sister, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Josephine stops next to me, pulling a thick cream-colored envelope from her designer handbag. She hands it to me with a warm, proud smile. "I apologize for the late hour," Aaliyah, Josephine says, her voice carrying effortlessly through the penthouse. "But the steering committee for the Black Excellence Entrepreneur Gala just held an emergency executive vote. As the primary financial sponsor and newly appointed chairwoman of the board, I wanted to personally deliver the news." Jasmine stops breathing entirely. Her face turns an ashen, sickly shade of gray as the reality of who she just tried to manipulate crashes down on her. Josephine turns slowly, fixing Jasmine with a stare so cold it could freeze water. "They received your pathetic little fabricated emails, Jasmine," Josephine says, her tone dripping with absolute disdain. "And they immediately forwarded them directly to me. Did you honestly believe you could launch a smear campaign against a Halloway in this city and get away with it?" Jasmine completely crumbles. The arrogant, vindictive sneer vanishes from her face the moment Josephine Halloway delivers her lethal reality check. Deprived of her fraudulent wealth and stripped of her ability to manipulate the narrative, Jasmine physically recoils. She stammers something unintelligible, backing away toward the private elevator like a frightened child. She does not offer an apology. She simply turns and flees the penthouse, the heavy steel doors sliding shut to erase her from my sanctuary. The silence she leaves behind is incredibly peaceful, but I know this war is far from over. With Desmond paralyzed by the SEC freezing his offshore assets and Jasmine's social assassination attempt brutally neutralized by my birth mother, the Dupree family is running out of options. But Vivian has always been the most dangerous player on the board, because she operates entirely under the guise of holy righteousness. By Wednesday afternoon, my phone is flooded with passive-aggressive text messages from numbers I have not saved in years. Vivian has retreated to her final stronghold of social power. Mount Zion Fellowship is the most influential and prestigious megachurch in the city. It is a massive, sprawling complex where the city's elite gather every Sunday to network and show off their bespoke tailoring under the pretense of worship. Vivian has served as the president of the Women's Auxiliary Committee for over a decade. She wields her position on the church board like a finely sharpened broadsword, using gossip masked as prayer requests to control the congregation. I do not need to be in the committee meetings to know exactly how Vivian is spinning the narrative. Several younger women from the choir who always saw through Vivian's pristine facade forward me the group chat messages. Vivian has launched a masterclass in gaslighting. She is painting me as a deeply disturbed prodigal daughter who suffered a severe psychotic break. She is telling the prayer warriors that I have been seduced by dangerous con artists, pretending to be my biological family. She claims Desmond's assets were frozen by a malicious cyber attack that I orchestrated during a manic episode. She is crying perfectly timed tears, begging the congregation to pray for my broken mind, and casting herself as the ultimate heartbroken Christian martyr who sacrificed everything to save an ungrateful street child. This is her classic playbook. It is the exact same action-based manipulation she used when we were teenagers. When I was 16, the church youth group was selecting a delegate for a highly coveted leadership scholarship. I had the highest grades and the most volunteer hours. The night before the announcement, Vivian stood up during evening service and tearfully asked the congregation to pray for my sticky fingers. She fabricated a story that she had caught me stealing from Jasmine's purse, framing it as a tragic result of my impoverished genetics. The scholarship went to the daughter of the head deacon, and Vivian looked like a saint for being so transparent about her troubled adopted child. I spent the next 2 years sitting in the back pews consumed by shame while people whispered about me. She thinks I will hide. She thinks the weight of public religious guilt will force me back into submission. She expects me to crawl into the sanctuary and beg for her public forgiveness to restore my reputation. Sunday morning arrives, crisp and bright. I do not wear the muted, dull colors Vivian always forced me to wear so I would not draw attention away from Jasmine's vibrant dresses. I select a tailored crimson suit that fits flawlessly, pairing it with gold accents and a pair of sharp stiletto heels. My natural hair is styled in a fierce, voluminous crown. I look powerful. I look expensive. I look absolutely nothing like the frightened, insecure girl they raised. Josephine insists on accompanying me. When we step out of the black Maybach and walk up the wide marble steps of Mount Zion Fellowship, the energy in the courtyard shifts immediately. The greeters at the heavy oak doors stumble over their welcomes, their eyes widening as they recognize Josephine Halloway. She is a titan in this city, a billionaire whose philanthropic reach extends far beyond these church walls. Whispers ripple through the lobby as we bypass the crowded greeting line. The sanctuary is massive, bathed in warm light from stained glass windows. Thousands of congregants are already seated, the choir swaying gently on the stage. We do not sit in the back. Josephine and I walk confidently down the center aisle, sliding into an empty space in the third row, perfectly situated in the direct line of sight of the pulpit. Vivian is sitting in the front row, reserved for church elders. I see her spine stiffen the moment she spots me. She does not turn around, but I watch her grip her leather-bound Bible so tightly her knuckles turn stark white. She did not expect me to show up. She certainly did not expect me to show up flanked by Josephine Halloway. The service proceeds through the worship songs and the announcements. The tension in the front rows is thick enough to cut with a knife. People are stealing covert glances at our pew, their faces a mixture of intense curiosity and blatant shock. Finally, Pastor Evans, an older man with a booming voice and a penchant for dramatic sermons, calls for the testimony portion of the service. This is the moment congregants are allowed to approach the microphone to share their struggles and victories. Vivian is out of her seat before the pastor even finishes his sentence. She glides up the steps to the altar, adjusting her wide-brimmed designer hat. She takes the microphone from the stand, her face already arranged in an expression of profound, devastating sorrow. She looks out over the 2,000 attendees, letting a heavy, heavy silence fall over the sanctuary. Then her eyes lock directly onto mine. Church family. Vivian begins, her voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. I stand before you today, A broken woman. A mother who is bleeding from the inside out. For 35 years, my husband and I poured our blood, sweat, and tears into raising a child that was not ours. We took a little girl from the darkest, deepest gutter of this city, and we gave her our name. We gave her our home. We gave her the Lord. A chorus of sympathetic murmurs washes through the congregation. Several women in the auxiliary row nod their heads, wiping their eyes. But Satan is a liar! Vivian cries, her voice rising in pitch, echoing powerfully through the sound system. The enemy has attacked my home. The enemy has poisoned my daughter's mind. She has turned her back on the very people who saved her life. She is spreading vicious lies, trying to destroy her father's immaculate business reputation. She has allied herself with strangers who want to tear this blessed family apart. It has broken my heart into a million pieces. Vivian wipes a single, flawless tear from her cheek, perfectly maintaining her composure. But the Lord says, we must forgive 70 times 7. And so I stand here today in front of God and all these witnesses to say that I forgive you, Aaliyah. She points her manicured finger directly at me, making sure every single person in the massive room turns to look at the third row. I forgive your lies, Vivian projects her voice dripping with artificial grace. I forgive your betrayal. I know your mind is sick right now, but this church is a hospital for the broken. Come to the altar, Aaliyah. Come down here and repent. Lay down this dark spiritual warfare, and come back to the mother who loves you. We can fix this together. Let the Lord heal your troubled mind. It is the ultimate trap. If I walk out, I look like the guilty, unrepentant villain she claims I am. If I lose my temper and scream, I confirm her narrative that I am mentally unstable. Vivian has cornered me, using the entire congregation as her personal jury. She looks down at me from the stage, her eyes gleaming with triumphant, malicious satisfaction. I do not flinch. I do not cry. I stand up slowly, smoothing the front of my crimson blazer. The sanctuary goes dead silent. The rustling of church programs stops completely. You can hear a pin drop in the massive room as I step out of the pew and walk down the center aisle. My heels click rhythmically against the polished stone floor, a steady, confident drumbeat. Josephine remains seated, watching me with a small, fiercely proud smile. I walk up the carpeted steps to the altar. Vivian's triumphant smile widens, assuming she has successfully beaten me into public submission. She holds her arms out, ready to pull me into a highly photographed, forgiving embrace. I do not hug her. I step right past her outstretched arms and gently but firmly take the microphone from her hands. Vivian blinks in shock, her arms dropping awkwardly to her sides. I turn to face the congregation. I look out over the sea of faces, recognizing the women who judged me, the deacons who ignored me, and the community Vivian weaponized against me for decades. Thank you, Sister Vivian, I say, my voice projecting clearly through the massive speakers, calm, even, and entirely unshaken. That was an incredibly moving testimony. I think we can all agree that transparency and absolute truth are the foundations of a healthy spiritual life. The truth sets us free. I turn slightly to face Pastor Evans, who is standing just a few feet away near the main pulpit. He looks slightly bewildered by the deviation from the usual Sunday routine. I reach into the inside pocket of my blazer and pull out a thick, folded piece of heavy stock paper. It bears the official raised seal of the State Records Department. Pastor Evans, I say, walking over and handing the document directly to him. Sister Vivian just spoke beautifully about salvation and honesty. In the spirit of total transparency, I would like you to read the highlighted section of this official state record to the congregation. It is a vital piece of my family history. Pastor Evans hesitates, looking from me to Vivian. Vivian's face has suddenly gone completely rigid. The color drains from her cheeks, leaving her looking like a wax figure. Pastor Evans reaches into his breast pocket, pulls out his reading glasses, and slides them onto his nose. He unfolds the heavy document. The entire sanctuary holds its collective breath. The pastor's eyes scan the highlighted text. I watch his expression shift from polite confusion to total disbelief. The paper visibly shakes in his hands. He reads the text again, as if hoping the words will magically change. He lets out a sharp, involuntary gasp, that is amplified perfectly by his lapel microphone echoing like a gunshot through the room. He slowly lowers the document. He looks up, taking his glasses off with trembling fingers. He turns to stare at Vivian with a mixture of profound horror and absolute disgust. Sister Vivian, the pastor, says, his voice vibrating through the silent church stripped of all its usual preaching cadence. This is an official federal investigative report. This says you forged a death certificate for her biological mother. The entire congregation gasps in unison. It is a massive wave of sound, a collective shock wave that rocks the sanctuary. Vivian lets out a strangled animalistic sound. She does not try to defend herself. She does not try to grab the microphone. She hikes up her designer skirt, turns around, and literally runs off the stage, fleeing toward the side exit as the choir erupts into chaos behind her. The sharp, bitter aroma of freshly roasted espresso beans fills the quiet corner of the artisan coffee shop downtown. It has been exactly 48 hours since Vivian ran out of Mount Zion Fellowship in a blind panic, leaving her pristine social reputation shattered on the altar steps. The fallout from the forged death certificate has been swift and absolute. My boutique forensic accounting firm has been fielding calls from city officials looking to distance themselves from the Dupree family, while the SEC tightens its grip on Connor's frozen wealth management accounts. I am sitting at a small marble table by the floor-to-ceiling window, going over the final audit reports for the federal prosecutors. I take a slow, deliberate sip of my black coffee, relishing the rare moment of quiet. That quiet shatters the second the heavy glass door of the coffee shop swings open. Desmond marches inside. The polished, arrogant real estate mogul who used to terrorize me at the dinner table is entirely gone. His custom-tailored suit hangs loosely on his frame as if he has lost 10 pounds in the last 2 days. His face is flushed a dangerous shade of crimson, and his eyes are wide with the manic, unpredictable energy of a cornered predator. He scans the room, spots me by the window, and makes a beeline for my table. He does not bother with greetings. He pulls out the iron chair opposite me and sits down heavily, slamming his large hands flat against the marble surface. "You think you are so clever, Aaliyah." Desmond growls, his voice a low, vibrating rumble of pure malice. "You think you can just burn my wife at the altar, terrify my daughter into hiding, and freeze my son-in-law out of his own firm. You think you have won because you found some rich benefactors to hide behind." I do not flinch. I slowly set my coffee cup down and meet his manic gaze with absolute indifference. "You burned yourselves, Desmond," I say, keeping my voice perfectly level. "I just provided the federal government with the matches." Desmond leans forward, aggressively invading my personal space. He abandons the entire concerned father act, completely dropping the patriarchal mask he wore for 35 years. He reaches into his breast pocket and pulls out a thick folded stack of papers, tossing them onto the table. "You need to call off your federal watchdogs right now," Desmond demands, tapping the stack of papers with a heavy finger. "You need to call the SEC and tell them your little forensic audit was entirely flawed, because if you do not, I am going to the press tomorrow morning with these." I glance at the papers but do not touch them. "What exactly am I looking at, Desmond?" He smiles, a wicked, desperate stretching of his lips. "You are looking at the destruction of the Holloway family legacy," he spits out gleefully. "Josephine and Reginald think they are untouchable. They think their precious black excellence brand makes them bulletproof in this city. But I have spent the last 3 days creating a masterpiece. I have fabricated financial documents, offshore routing numbers, and falsified tax returns that directly link the Holloway Foundation to domestic embezzlement and political bribery. I have digital signatures ready to go. I will drag your new birth parents through so much legal mud they will be begging to disown you all over again. I will make sure the city revokes every single one of their development permits." I stare at him, letting the sheer audacity of his threat settle in the air. "You are truly pathetic," I say, my tone dripping with clinical disgust. "When I was 10 years old, you made me sit at the kitchen table for 4 hours until I perfectly memorized your real estate portfolio. You told me that building wealth required ruthless intelligence. But you are not intelligent, Desmond. You are just a slumlord who builds his wealth by stepping on the necks of vulnerable people. You used my stolen social security number to buy up foreclosed properties in marginalized neighborhoods. You evicted single mothers while hiding behind my identity to avoid city council conflict of interest laws. You are a fraud. Desmond's face twitches, his anger boiling over. It does not matter how I built it, he snarls. It only matters that I have the power to destroy your new family if you do not back down. You have 24 hours to drop the SEC investigation, Aaliyah. Or the Halloways lose everything. You are deeply mistaken about who holds the power in this city, Dupree. The deep, resonant voice comes from directly behind Desmond's chair. Desmond freezes, the blood draining from his face as Reginald Halloway steps out from the shadowed hallway near the coffee shop management office. My biological father walks forward with a calm, predatory grace. He is wearing a dark, bespoke suit, his posture radiating the kind of absolute generational authority that makes Desmond look like a cheap hustler playing dress-up. Reginald moves to stand directly beside my chair, flanking me with a fiercely protective presence. Desmond scrambles to stand up, his chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. Reginald Halloway, he stammers, trying to regain his footing. You should look at these documents. I am completely prepared to ruin you. Reginald does not even glance at the papers on the table. He looks at Desmond with an expression of profound, devastating pity. You are threatening my daughter's legacy. Reginald says, his voice a low, thunderous rumble that commands the entire room. My family has been building legitimate businesses in this city since the 1960s. We marched for civil rights. We funded community centers. We built hospitals. We did not build our empire by forging adoption papers and stealing the identities of traumatized children. You are a slumlord, Desmond, a parasite who feeds on the vulnerable. You think your fabricated documents scare me. I own the building you are standing in right now. I own the printing company you used to forge those papers. I even own the local news stations you think you are going to call tomorrow morning. Desmond swallows hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. He looks from Reginald to me, suddenly realizing the monumental scale of his miscalculation. He thought he was ambushing a defenseless accountant, but he walked straight into a perfectly executed trap. You cannot stop the press, Desmond argues, his voice losing its aggressive edge. Once the story is out, the damage is done. I reach into my designer purse and pull out a small silver flash drive. I place it gently on the marble table directly on top of Desmond's forged documents. I slide the drive across the smooth surface until it rests inches from his shaking hands. There will be no story, Desmond, I say, leaning forward to ensure he hears every single syllable. That flash drive contains the decrypted routing data for every single wire transfer you made to Connor's wealth management firm. It details exactly how you siphoned millions of dollars in illegal real estate kickbacks through the shell companies you registered in my name. It also contains the recorded audio of your son-in-law Connor sitting in my office yesterday morning, completely throwing you under the bus. He gave the federal government everything they needed to seal your coffin in exchange for a plea deal. Desmond stares at the silver flash drive as if it is a live explosive. He breathes heavily, his chest heaving under his wrinkled suit jacket. Connor would never do that, he whispers, though the pure terror in his eyes confirms he knows it is true. He already did, Reginald says smoothly. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Securities and Exchange Commission currently have the original copies of that drive. You are not holding any leverage today, Desmond. You are simply running out of time. You have exactly 48 hours before the federal indictments drop. I add, checking the gold watch on my wrist. I suggest you use that time to find a very good criminal defense attorney, because the public defenders are going to laugh you out of the courtroom. Your assets are frozen. Your wife is a public disgrace. Your daughter is broke and your son-in-law is a federal informant. It is over, Desmond. Desmond looks like a man who has just been handed his own death sentence. His jaw works silently, struggling to form words that no longer matter. Blind panic overtakes him. He snatches the silver flash drive off the table, his large hand crushing the forged documents underneath it. He shoves the items into his jacket pocket and turns around, fleeing the coffee shop with the frantic, clumsy steps of a desperate coward. Reginald places a warm, heavy hand on my shoulder as we watch Desmond crash through the glass doors and stumble out onto the busy downtown sidewalk. Are you all right, Aaliyah? My father asks quietly, his voice full of gentle concern. I am perfectly fine, I reply, placing my hand over his. I feel lighter than I have in 35 years. We turn our attention to the large floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the street. Desmond is sprinting toward his silver luxury sedan, parked illegally in a loading zone. He fumbles with his keys, dropping them on the pavement before snatching them up and practically throwing himself into the driver's seat. He slams the door shut and starts the engine, desperate to escape the reality of his collapsing life. He does not even have a chance to shift the car into drive. Suddenly, three unmarked black SUVs screech around the corner, blocking the street with absolute military precision. Two of the massive vehicles swerve aggressively, boxing Desmond's silver sedan in from the front and the rear. The third SUV blocks his driver's side door, pinning him completely against the curb. The doors of the black SUVs fly open simultaneously. A dozen federal agents wearing dark tactical gear and windbreakers with FBI printed in bold yellow letters swarm the silver sedan. They move with terrifying speed, shouting commands that are muffled by the thick glass of the coffee shop window. Two agents draw their weapons, keeping them aimed securely at the vehicle, while a third agent aggressively yanks Desmond's car door open. I watch with absolute, unblinking satisfaction as Desmond is forcefully dragged out of his luxury vehicle. His expensive suit jacket catches on the doorframe, ripping loudly as the agents spin him around and slam him face first against the hood of his own car. They wrench his arms behind his back, the distinct metallic glint of steel handcuffs flashing in the morning sunlight as they lock his wrists together. Desmond's face is pressed awkwardly against the cold metal of his hood. He looks up, his panicked, terrified eyes finding mine through the coffee shop window. He sees me standing there, flanked by my true father, completely untouched by his chaos. I do not smile. I do not wave. I simply watch him get shoved into the back of a federal vehicle, erasing him from my life forever. The chokehold has finally snapped his neck. I pick up my coffee cup and take another slow, deliberate sip. The coffee has never tasted better. The opulent grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel is a masterpiece of gilded architecture and modern luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the immaculate white floral arrangements and towering champagne towers. This is the Black Excellence Entrepreneur Gala, the absolute pinnacle of the city's social and professional calendar. For years, I watched Vivian and Jasmine obsess over this exact event, spending thousands of dollars on custom designer gowns just to secure a table near the back of the room. Tonight, I am not sitting in the back. I stand near the grand sweeping staircase of the VIP lobby, flanked by Jamal and Reginald. I am wearing a custom-tailored ivory silk gown that drapes flawlessly to the floor, radiating a quiet, unshakable power. There is a profound sense of peace washing over me. The federal indictments against Desmond dropped exactly 48 hours after our coffee shop meeting, just as I promised. He is currently sitting in a federal holding cell without bail, and Connor's firm is officially locked down by SEC regulators. The fraudulent empire that funded my childhood torment has completely collapsed. But a parasite does not die easily. It simply looks for a new host. Across the expansive marble lobby, I spot her. Jasmine is marching toward the primary event coordinator's desk, moving with a frantic, manic energy that completely shatters her usual curated elegance. She is wearing a heavily sequined crimson dress that screams for attention, her heels clicking aggressively against the polished stone. She looks exhausted and unhinged, her smile stretched so tightly across her face it looks like a grimace. Despite her father facing decades in federal prison and her husband being actively investigated, Jasmine has shown up tonight. She cannot help herself. Her entire identity is tied to being seen in rooms like this. She assumes that if she can just maintain her socialite facade, no one will notice the burning wreckage of her real life. And more importantly, she is here to make sure my night is ruined. I place a gentle hand on Jamal's arm, stopping him from stepping forward. Let her play her hand, I murmur, keeping my voice low. I want to watch this. Jasmine reaches the registration desk, leaning heavily against the velvet-covered table. She flashes a wide artificial smile at Elise, the head event coordinator. Good evening, Elise, Jasmine says, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet condescension. I am Jasmine Dupree. We spoke on the phone earlier today. I just wanted to personally verify that the committee received my urgent tip regarding the guest list. I know how deeply this organization values integrity, and I simply could not sleep knowing you were about to let a criminal walk into this beautiful ballroom. Elise, an incredibly sharp woman in a tailored black suit, looks up from her digital tablet. She studies Jasmine with a mixture of profound confusion and deep, uncomfortable pity. I am sorry, Ms. Dupree. Elise replies, her tone strictly professional. I am not sure what you are referring to. The guest list was finalized weeks ago. Jasmine lets out a sharp breath of forced laughter, waving her manicured hand dismissively. Oh, please do not play coy, Elise. I sent over the financial documents this morning. The ones proving that Aaliyah embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars from my youth literacy foundation. It is a massive federal scandal. She is going to be indicted any day now. It would be a complete public relations nightmare for the committee to have her sitting in this room mingling with legitimate business owners. I am just trying to protect the gala's reputation. You need to have security cross her name off the list and deny her entry. I watched the exchange from the shadows of the staircase, feeling a cold, clinical disgust. Jasmine has spent her entire adult life stealing. She took the $75,000 from my college trust fund to launch her failed lifestyle brand. She regularly siphoned donation money from her own literacy nonprofit to pay for her luxury vacations and designer handbags. Now she is projecting her own financial crimes onto me in a desperate bid to preserve her crumbling ego. Elise stares at Jasmine, her expression shifting from polite confusion to absolute disbelief. She taps the screen of her tablet, pulling up the master itinerary for the evening. Ma'am, Elise says, her voice carrying clearly across the quiet lobby. I think you are severely misinformed. Aaliyah is not just on the standard guest list. She is our keynote speaker for the evening. We are honoring her forensic accounting firm with the Entrepreneur of the Year award. Jasmine physically recoils as if she has just been struck across the face. Her mouth drops open and the sickly sweet socialite smile completely vanishes, replaced by an ugly contorted mask of pure rage. That is impossible! Jasmine shrieks, her voice cracking loudly, drawing the attention of several wealthy guests arriving through the revolving doors. She is a fraud. She is a criminal. You cannot put her on that stage. She is ruining my life. My parents loved her. We gave her a home. We gave her an education. We pulled her out of the garbage and gave her a life. She is just doing all of this because she is bitterly jealous of me. She is jealous because I am the pretty one. I am the successful one. She is nothing but an ugly, awkward college dropout who had to run away to find fake parents because we finally saw her for the psycho she really is. Jasmine slams her fists down onto the velvet registration table, sending a stack of premium programs scattering across the floor. She is completely losing her mind. The golden child is having a full public meltdown in front of the very people she has spent her entire life trying to impress. The wives of city councilmen, wealthy real estate developers, and prominent local judges have all stopped in their tracks, watching the chaotic spectacle with unhidden disgust. Elise takes a slow step back from the table, signaling to a nearby security guard with a subtle nod of her head. Ms. Dupree, you are causing a massive disturbance. I am going to have to ask you to lower your voice or leave the premises immediately. Jasmine completely ignores the warning. The veins in her neck are bulging, and her hands are shaking violently. You do not tell me what to do! Jasmine screams, jabbing her finger in Elise's face. Do you know who I am? My family practically built the real estate market in this city. If you do not remove Aaliyah from that stage right now, I will personally make sure the title sponsor of this entire event pulls their funding. I demand to speak to the title sponsor right this second. Bring them to me now. Elise does not flinch. She maintains her perfectly calm professional demeanor, adjusting her blazer. She looks directly at Jasmine and then points a slender finger across the lobby toward the grand staircase. If you would like to speak to the title sponsor, ma'am, Elise says, her voice ringing with absolute finality. She is standing right over there. Jasmine spins around, her eyes wild and frantic, following the trajectory of Elise's finger. Her gaze lands on the bottom of the sweeping staircase. Josephine Halloway steps forward out of the shadows. She is wearing a breathtaking midnight blue evening gown, adorned with thousands of hand-sewn crystals that catch the chandelier light like diamonds. She radiates an immense, terrifying power. She moves with the fluid, lethal grace of a queen executing a traitor in her own court. Josephine stops a few feet away from Jasmine. The air in the lobby feels like it has been sucked out of the room. I am the title sponsor of this gala, Josephine states, her voice smooth, cold, and utterly merciless. And I am also the chairwoman of the executive board. Jasmine freezes. The remaining color drains completely from her face, leaving her looking pale and sickly. Her mouth opens, but no sound comes out. The sudden realization that she just demanded to speak to the very woman whose family she has been trying to destroy paralyzes her completely. We received your pathetic little fabricated emails this morning. Jasmine Josephine continues, taking one slow step closer. Did you honestly believe you could launch a desperate amateur smear campaign against my daughter, and I would not immediately trace the IP address right back to your phone? Did you think forging federal financial documents was a smart strategy, while your father is currently sitting in a federal holding cell for doing the exact same thing? Jasmine takes a shaky step backward, shaking her head in silent denial. Your husband is cooperating with federal authorities, Josephine says, delivering the final crushing blow with absolute precision. Your father is facing 30 years in prison. Your accounts are frozen, and your ridiculous little charity is being audited by the IRS tomorrow morning because I personally reported your embezzlement. You are entirely out of options. You have absolutely nothing left to steal. Josephine turns her head slightly, making eye contact with the head of the gala security team. Escort this woman off the premises immediately, Josephine orders, her tone leaving no room for debate. If she resists, call the police and have her arrested for trespassing and creating a public disturbance. Two massive security guards immediately step forward, grabbing Jasmine firmly by both arms. The physical contact shatters her paralysis. She begins to thrash and kick, screaming incoherently as they drag her backward across the polished marble floor. Let go of me! Jasmine shrieks, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. You cannot do this to me. I am a Dupree. I am a socialite. She is the fake. She is the criminal. The city's elite part, like the Red Sea, stepping back in sheer horror as Jasmine is forcibly hauled toward the heavy glass exit doors. Women she used to have brunch with turn their faces away, whispering to each other in shocked, hushed tones. The public humiliation is absolute. Her carefully curated high society image is permanently dead and buried. I stand quietly near the staircase, watching her get dragged into the cold night air. I do not feel anger. I do not feel pity. I raise my arms, slowly checking the time on my gold watch. I look up, meeting Josephine's proud eyes, and a genuine, peaceful smile spreads across my face. We have exactly 5 minutes until my keynote address begins. The stage is finally mine. The heavy oak doors of the grand ballroom loom just down the corridor, but my path to the stage is suddenly blocked. Desmond and Vivian step out from the shadowed alcove near the coat check. They must have slipped in through the service entrance, avoiding the main lobby where their biological daughter was just publicly humiliated and dragged out by event security. The contrast between my former adoptive parents and the glittering opulence of the gala is incredibly jarring. Desmond is wearing a bespoke tuxedo, but it hangs loosely on his frame as if he has aged a decade in a matter of days. He smells of stale sweat and bitter desperation, entirely stripped of the arrogant cedar cologne he usually wears. He has barely been out of federal custody for 12 hours, having drained whatever liquid assets Vivian could scrape together just to post his exorbitant bail. Vivian is desperately clinging to her immaculate high society facade. She is wearing a heavy diamond necklace and a rigid silk gown, but her eyes are frantic and bloodshot, darting around the corridor to see if anyone is watching them. They actively try to corner me, backing me toward the velvet-draped wall. Desmond steps entirely too close, trying to use his physical size to intimidate me the very same way he did when I was a helpless child. You think this little party makes you untouchable, Aaliyah? He hisses, his voice a harsh, rattling whisper that reeks of fear. You think just because you wear a nice dress and stand next to Josephine Holloway that you have actually won. I spent 48 hours in a federal holding cell because of your little stunt. But I have lawyers. I have judges in my pocket. I have favors to call in that you cannot even begin to comprehend. We are going to bury you. We will tell the press you manipulated the accounts yourself. We will say you set up the shell companies and funneled the money. You are the accountant, after all. Who do you think a jury is going to believe? A respected real estate developer, or a disgruntled adopted dropout holding a grudge? Vivian steps up right beside him, clutching her designer evening bag like a weapon. You are making a terrible mistake, Aaliyah. She whispers, her voice shaking with toxic, unyielding rage. You need to walk onto that stage tonight and publicly apologize to us. You need to tell all these people that you suffered a mental breakdown and filed those SEC reports by mistake. If you try to speak against us tonight, we will completely ruin you. We still have social power in this city. People know us. People respect us. If you do not fix this right now, we will spend every waking moment making sure you never work in this state again. I do not flinch. I do not step back. I stand my ground, looking at the two people who kept me captive for my entire childhood. I look at Vivian, the woman who forged a death certificate to steal me from my biological mother, just so she could have a charity case to parade around at her church luncheons to boost her own holy image. I look at Desmond, the man who stole my college tuition to fund his biological daughter's failed vanity projects, while forcing me to sleep in a cramped room above the garage. They are no longer terrifying giants. They are just two desperate, pathetic criminals running out of time. You do not have any social power left, Vivian. I say, my voice perfectly calm and completely unbothered. Your daughter was just dragged out of this building by security for throwing a tantrum like a toddler. Your son-in-law is cooperating with federal agents and handing over every single one of your ledgers. Your bank accounts are entirely frozen. The only reason you are standing in this corridor right now is because you are entirely too arrogant to realize that your reign is completely over. Desmond raises his hand, his face contorting into a violent, ugly snarl. Before he can even think about swinging a solid wall of bespoke tailored muscle steps between us, Reginald Halloway materializes from the ballroom entrance, his presence alone radiating an immense, crushing gravity. He does not raise his voice or draw a weapon. He does not have to. He simply looks at the man who abused his daughter with an expression of such absolute lethal promise that Desmond instantly drops his hand and takes a panicked, stumbling step backward. It is time, Alia, Reginald says softly, offering me his arm, while keeping his dark, piercing eyes locked directly on Desmond's terrified face. The committee is waiting for you. I take my father's arm, turning my back on Vivian and Desmond. I do not look over my shoulder as we walk through the heavy oak doors and step into the magnificent grand ballroom. The sheer scale of the event is breathtaking. Thousands of the city's most influential Black entrepreneurs, business leaders, and politicians are seated at circular tables adorned with cascading white orchids and flickering crystal candelabras. Waiters in crisp white jackets move seamlessly through the crowd, pouring vintage champagne. The low hum of powerful networking fills the massive room. This is the absolute pinnacle of excellence and innovation in the state. For years, I sat in cramped library cubicles studying corporate tax law, while Vivian and Jasmine attended events exactly like this one, mocking my ambition and telling me I would never belong in these circles. Tonight, I am the guest of honor. Reginald escorts me to the primary sponsor table situated directly in the center of the room, just below the stage. Josephine is already seated, radiating elegance and quiet, unshakable strength. Jamal is nowhere to be seen at our table because he is currently walking up the carpeted steps to the main stage. The glittering chandeliers in the grand ballroom slowly dim, signaling the beginning of the keynote presentation. A hush falls over the massive crowd as a crisp, bright spotlight illuminates the wooden podium. Jamal adjusts the microphone, looking out over the sea of powerful faces. He commands the room effortlessly, his sharp charcoal suit catching the stage lights. Good evening, everyone. Jamal begins, his deep, resonant voice echoing perfectly through the state-of-the-art sound system. Tonight we are gathered to celebrate resilience, innovation, and the uncompromising pursuit of truth in business. We are here to honor those who absolutely refuse to cut corners, those who build their empires on solid foundations of integrity rather than the exploitation of others. I can feel the collective attention of the room focusing entirely on Jamal. He speaks with a steady, measured cadence that demands absolute respect from every single person in the room. For decades, my family has operated under a very simple principle. Jamal continues, resting his large hands on the edges of the podium. True power is not about how many properties you own or how many political favors you can buy. True power is about walking into a room and knowing that your hands are completely clean. It is about protecting the vulnerable and exposing those who mistakenly believe their wealth gives them the right to act above the law. We do not tolerate parasites in our community. We do not tolerate those who build their legacy by stealing the identities and the futures of the innocent. A low murmur of agreement ripples through the ballroom. Everyone in this room reads the financial news. They know exactly who Jamal is referring to, without him ever needing to say the name. The federal raid on Desmond's real estate firm and the aggressive SEC lockdown on Connor's wealth management accounts have been dominating the major headlines for the past 48 hours. The Dupree family name is currently synonymous with fraud. Tonight we are honoring a woman who embodies everything this gala represents. Jamal says, his voice swelling with deep, unmistakable pride. She is a brilliant forensic accountant. She is a woman who single-handedly untangled a web of corporate corruption, so massive it took the federal government by surprise. She took down fraudulent giants without blinking because she knows that the truth is the most devastating weapon in the world. She is the newest senior partner at Holloway Financial. Jamal pauses, letting the heavy weight of his words settle over the completely silent crowd. He looks down from the stage, making direct eye contact with me. But more importantly, Jamal says, his voice dropping into a register of profound, fierce familial love. For the first time in 35 years, I have the absolute honor of introducing her by her true name. Please welcome our keynote speaker, my sister Aaliyah Holloway. The reaction is instantaneous and wildly explosive. The polite applause typical of these corporate events is entirely replaced by a deafening, stunned roar. The quiet whispers that had been circulating about my identity, the rapid rumors about the Dupree family scandal, the sudden mysterious appearance of the Holloway heir, it all violently collides in this single massive moment. The collective gasp from the tables near the back of the room is audible over the thunderous applause. I stand up slowly, smoothing the heavy silk of my ivory gown. Out of the corner of my eye, I see frantic movement near the ballroom entrance. Vivian and Desmond had snuck inside the doors, standing near the back wall, hoping to watch me fail on stage. As Jamal speaks the name Aaliyah Holloway, the brittle glass facade of Vivian's sanity completely shatters. The crystal champagne flute slips directly from Vivian's trembling hand. It hits the polished marble floor with a sharp, piercing crash that slices cleanly through the roaring applause. I do not look at her. I keep my chin high and my shoulders back as I walk toward the stage. The applause swells, echoing like rolling thunder in my ears as I climb the carpeted steps. Jamal meets me at the top, pulling me into a fierce, protective embrace before stepping aside to give me the podium. I step up to the microphone. The sheer power of the moment is intoxicating. I look out over the thousands of faces looking back at me, waiting to hear me speak. I scan the very back of the room, finding Vivian and Desmond frozen in their tracks, looking exactly like two ghosts who have just witnessed their own execution. I lean forward. The microphone feeds back with a sharp metallic whine that slices through the remaining applause, demanding total and absolute silence. The massive room goes entirely still. I look directly into the terrified eyes of the people who stole my life, and I smile. The sharp whine of the microphone fades into the cavernous ceiling of the grand ballroom. I stand at the acrylic podium, looking out over the absolute silence of 3,000 people. The most powerful figures in the city are staring back at me, their faces a mixture of shock, curiosity, and breathless anticipation. I do not look at my notes. I do not need them. I have lived the contents of this speech every single day of my life. My gaze remains locked on the back of the room where Vivian and Desmond stand, completely paralyzed. I offer them one final serene smile before I lean into the microphone. Good evening, I say, my voice steady, projecting crystal clear through the massive sound system. Thank you to the steering committee for this profound honor, and thank you to Jamal Holloway for that introduction. It is a privilege to stand before you tonight, not just as a forensic accountant, but as a survivor of the very systems we are gathered here to dismantle. I pace myself, letting the words resonate across the room. We hear the phrase, Black generational wealth constantly in our circles. It is a beautiful, necessary concept. It represents our collective dream of building a foundation so strong that our children and our grandchildren never have to experience the systemic financial starvation our ancestors endured. We celebrate the entrepreneurs, the real estate developers, and the corporate visionaries who build these empires. We applaud the individuals who seemingly lift up our communities. I press the small remote clicker in my right hand. The three massive high-definition screens behind the stage simultaneously ignite, flooding the ballroom with a crisp white light. But tonight, I want to talk about the rot that sometimes hides beneath the foundation. I continue, my tone dropping into a clinical surgical precision. I want to talk about predators who wear the mask of philanthropy. In my line of work as a forensic auditor, I follow the data. Ledgers do not lie. Bank routing numbers do not possess an ego. Wire transfers do not care about your social standing or your country club memberships. They simply tell the truth. And unfortunately, the truth is that some of the most celebrated wealth in this city is entirely fraudulent. Behind me, the screens display a series of heavily redacted financial documents. I have blacked out the specific names of the guilty parties, but the structural data remains visible. The audience is comprised of the city's financial and social elite. They are incredibly smart people. It only takes them a few seconds to recognize the familiar formatting of the municipal real estate development contracts projected on the 50-foot screens. Let us examine a hypothetical case study. I say, stepping out from behind the podium so the entire room can see me clearly. Let us look at a highly respected real estate magnate who built his reputation on urban renewal. On paper, this individual is a pillar of the community. But if you look at the corporate structuring displayed behind me, you will notice an intricate web of Delaware-based limited liability companies. These LLCs were specifically created to purchase foreclosed properties in marginalized neighborhoods, bypassing city council conflict of interest regulations. A low murmur begins to ripple through the front rows. Several prominent city council members sit up perfectly straight, adjusting their ties and staring intently at the projected contracts. They recognize the zoning codes. They know exactly which neighborhoods these documents refer to. To execute this level of corporate fraud, you need a clean ghost identity. I explain, pacing slowly across the stage. You need a social security number with absolutely zero credit history to serve as the foundational pillar for these shell companies. Our hypothetical real estate mogul could not use his own name. He could not use his biological children. So he found a loophole. He used the child he adopted. The murmurs in the ballroom escalate into an audible collective gasp. The realization is beginning to dawn on the crowd. They are putting the pieces together. They remember Vivian parading me around charity dinners for years, weaponizing my adoption story to secure social leverage. The screens shift, displaying a timeline of wire transfers. On the exact day this adopted child turned 18, our pillar of the community used her identity to open these shell companies. I state, my voice cutting through the rising noise in the room like a blade. He funneled millions of dollars in illegal kickbacks from city contractors through a wealth management firm owned conveniently by his own son-in-law. He hijacked a young girl's future, destroyed her credit score, and left her holding the bag for massive federal tax liabilities, all while smiling for the cameras and collecting community service awards. I look toward the back of the ballroom. Vivian is trembling so violently that the heavy diamonds around her neck are visibly shaking. The women standing near her, the very same socialites she spent decades trying to impress, are physically stepping away from her. The elite circle is violently rejecting the infection. Vivian clutches her evening bag to her chest, looking around with wild, frantic eyes, realizing she is entirely surrounded by people who now know exactly what she is. I drop the hypothetical framing. I stop pacing and plant my feet firmly in the center of the stage. Generational wealth isn't built by stealing the identities of orphaned children. I declare, my voice booming through the speakers, carrying the weight of 35 years of suppressed rage. It isn't built by claiming adoption subsidies while withholding love. I lock eyes directly with Vivian across the massive expanse of the ballroom. She flinches as if my words are physical blows. It is not built by forging state documents to tear a child away from her biological mother, just to create a convenient tax write-off and a domestic servant. I continue refusing to break eye contact. True wealth is built on integrity. It is built on honesty. The people who built their empires on the broken backs of vulnerable children are not visionaries, they are cowards, and their time in this city is officially over. The absolute destruction of his legacy is finally too much for Desmond. The carefully maintained facade of the wealthy, unbothered businessman completely snaps. He realizes that every single person in this room, his investors, his political allies, his country club peers, now knows he is a federal criminal and a fraud. His ego cannot handle the public execution. Desmond lets out a raw, guttural roar of pure animalistic fury. "You ungrateful little brat!" Desmond screams, his voice tearing through the shocked silence of the ballroom. He shoves past a prominent judge, practically throwing an elderly woman out of his way as he charges down the center aisle. His face is purple with rage, his eyes bulging from their sockets. He is marching directly toward the stage, his large fists clenched at his sides, intending to physically rip the microphone from my hands and drag me off the platform. The crowd erupts into total chaos. People are shouting, pulling their partners out of the way as Desmond barrels down the carpeted aisle like a derailed freight train. I do not move. I stand perfectly still on the stage watching him charge. I am not a frightened teenager anymore. He cannot hurt me. Desmond reaches the front of the room, preparing to lunge up the short staircase leading to the stage. He never even makes it to the first step. Reginald Holloway steps out from the front row, moving with a terrifying, explosive speed that defies his age. He intercepts Desmond at the base of the stairs, planting his bespoke leather shoes firmly into the carpet. Two massive private security guards immediately materialize from the shadows, flanking my biological father and forming an impenetrable human wall of tailored muscle and absolute authority. Desmond crashes directly into the security guards. They do not even flinch. One of the guards grabs Desmond by the lapels of his wrinkled tuxedo, effortlessly lifting him slightly off the ground and throwing him backward. Desmond stumbles wildly, his arms flailing before he crashes hard onto the floor, landing directly at the feet of the city's chief of police. "Get your hands off me!" Desmond bellows, spit flying from his lips as he struggles to scramble back to his feet. She is lying. She is a psychotic liar trying to ruin my family. I am Desmond Dupree. You cannot do this to me. Reginald looks down at the pathetic, sprawling mess of a man on the floor. His expression is devoid of any emotion, simply observing Desmond the way one might observe an insect. "You are nothing." Reginald says, his voice carrying a quiet, lethal resonance that echoes without needing a microphone. "And if you ever attempt to step toward my daughter again, I will ensure you spend the rest of your miserable life eating through a straw." The ballroom is completely unglued. The refined elegance of the gala has evaporated entirely, replaced by raw, primal spectacle. Everywhere I look, the city's elite are pulling out their smartphones. The flash of camera lights creates a strobe effect across the room. Hundreds of recording lights are blinking, steadily capturing every single humiliating second of Desmond's violent meltdown on the floor. They are recording Vivian, who has collapsed against a decorative pillar near the coat check, sobbing hysterically, with her face buried in her hands, completely abandoned by everyone she thought was her friend. They are recording Desmond being hauled forcefully to his feet by event security, his tuxedo torn and his dignity entirely eradicated. The perfect Dupree family, the untouchable titans of real estate, are being broadcast live to the entire world in glorious high definition as the absolute frauds they truly are. Their empire is gone, their money is frozen, their reputation is permanently incinerated. I stand on the stage, bathed in the bright, warm glow of the spotlight. I look down at Reginald, who looks back up at me with a fierce, protective nod. I look over at Josephine and Jamal, who are standing together watching the destruction with quiet, satisfied smiles. I let the roar of the crowd wash over me, feeling the heavy, invisible chains of my past finally fall away. I am Aaliyah Holloway, and my hands are completely clean. The blinding glare of 100 smartphone camera flashes turns the grand ballroom into a chaotic, strobe-lit theater. I remain perfectly still behind the acrylic podium, looking down at the absolute destruction of the people who once convinced me I was nothing. The power dynamic in the room has shifted with such violent velocity that the air actually feels different, heavy with judgment, thick with justice. Desmond is still sprawled on the ornate carpet at the base of the stage. He is gasping for breath, his chest heaving under his wrinkled, bespoke tuxedo. He looks up at Reginald Halloway, but my father simply steps back, adjusting his cuffs with a look of profound clinical disgust. Reginald does not need to lift a finger. Desmond has already destroyed himself. Near the back of the room, the paralysis finally breaks for Vivian. The shock that had rooted her to the floor near the coat check evaporates, replaced entirely by the cold hard adrenaline of a cornered animal. She realizes with sudden terrifying clarity that the federal indictments I mentioned during our coffee shop meeting were not a negotiation tactic. They were a promise. And time has just run out. Vivian scrambles forward. Her heavy silk gown catches on the edge of a chair, but she tears it free, not caring about the ripping fabric. She pushes through the crowd, ignoring the horrified stares of the women she has spent 3 decades trying to impress. She reaches Desmond, grabbing him by the collar of his jacket with a manic, desperate strength. "Get up," she hisses, her voice cracking under the strain of her panic. "Get up right now, Desmond. We have to leave. We have to get to the car." Desmond blinks at her, his eyes glassy and unfocused. His legendary ego, the very foundation of his identity, has been publicly shattered into a million irreparable pieces. He allows Vivian to haul him to his feet, stumbling heavily against her shoulder. They turn toward the grand mahogany doors at the back of the ballroom. The escape route looks like it spans 100 miles. The sea of the city's black elite, the politicians, the judges, the corporate titans, the very people Vivian and Desmond relied upon to maintain their untouchable status, now stands between them and the exit. Vivian tries to pull her shoulders back. She tries to lift her chin, attempting to summon the arrogant socialite persona that has shielded her for her entire life. But the mask is gone. The crowd does not part out of respect or deference. They step back out of sheer repulsion. They are pulling their silk skirts and tailored jackets out of the way, ensuring they do not accidentally brush against the disgraced couple. The silence of the crowd is far more devastating than any shouting could ever be. There are no sympathetic murmurs. There is no one rushing forward to offer legal assistance or a comforting hand. The people who drank their expensive wine and attended their lavish galas are now looking at them as if they are actively carrying a plague. Vivian makes eye contact with a prominent city councilwoman she hosted for brunch just last week. The councilwoman simply turns her back, taking a slow, deliberate sip of her champagne. The social capital they spent decades ruthlessly building, stealing my future to finance their ascent, evaporates completely in the span of a 3-minute walk. They are pariahs. They are ghosts, walking through a room of the living. I watch them from the stage, Jamal standing tall and immovable beside me. I do not feel an ounce of pity. I feel the profound, deep-seated peace of a ledger finally balancing. Vivian and Desmond reach the back of the ballroom. The heavy double mahogany doors stand closed, separating them from the lobby and their desperate hope for freedom. Desmond reaches out his large hand, shaking violently as his fingers graze the polished brass handle. He pushes forward, expecting the doors to yield. They do not yield. Instead, they are thrust open from the outside with a tremendous, unyielding force. Desmond stumbles backward, crying out in surprise as the heavy wood swings inward. The ambient light from the lobby spills into the dimly lit ballroom, illuminating the figures blocking the exit. A solid wall of federal agents stands in the threshold. They are wearing dark tactical windbreakers with the bright yellow letters FBI printed boldly across their chests. There are at least a dozen of them, completely locking down the corridor. 3 lead agents step decisively into the grand ballroom. The music, which had been playing softly in the background, is abruptly cut off by the sound engineer. The lead agent, a tall, commanding woman with a severe expression, steps directly into Desmond's path. She does not lower her voice. She speaks with a sharp, projecting authority, designed to be heard by the entire room. "Desmond and Vivian Dupree," the agent announces, flashing a silver badge that catches the glare of the chandeliers. You are under federal arrest. Vivian lets out a high-pitched wounded noise, clutching her throat. You cannot do this, she stammers, looking wildly around the room for anyone to intervene. We are respected members of this community. This is a misunderstanding. I want to speak to my lawyer immediately. The agent ignores her, completely, producing a pair of heavy steel handcuffs from her tactical belt. You are being charged with multiple counts of grand larceny, wire fraud, and federal tax evasion. The agent continues, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. The crowd murmurs, the white-collar crimes entirely expected after my keynote address. But the agent is not finished. She takes a deliberate step closer to Vivian, her eyes narrowing with absolute contempt. And you are also being charged with kidnapping, the agent declares, the word dropping like a live grenade into the center of the room. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping, forgery of state adoption records, and the unlawful detainment of a minor. The collective gasp from the ballroom is deafening. The white-collar financial crimes were enough to ruin their reputation, but the kidnapping charge elevates them to monsters. The elite crowd recoils further, a wave of genuine horror washing over the room. To steal millions from a charity is a crime. To steal a child from her mother, to forge a death certificate and hold a girl hostage in plain sight for 18 years is an act of pure concentrated evil. Turn around and place your hands behind your backs, the agent commands, signaling to the officers flanking her. Desmond offers no resistance. The fight has completely drained out of him. He turns around, his shoulders slumped in absolute defeat, offering his wrists to the officers. The sharp metallic ratcheting sound of the handcuffs clicking into place rings out with perfect clarity. Vivian, on the other hand, shatters. No, she screams violently, fighting against the female agent who grabs her arm. No, you cannot touch me. I am Vivian Dupree. I am a mother. I took her in when she had nothing. I saved her. She twists her body, trying to yank her arm free, but the agent sweeps her leg, forcing Vivian down onto her knees on the marble floor. The agent pins Vivian's arms securely behind her back, snapping the steel cuffs shut with forceful finality. I stand on the stage, watching the woman who locked me in a dark room for crying over a spilled glass of water get forced to her knees in front of 3,000 people. The universe has an incredible sense of timing. Before the agents can haul Vivian back to her feet, a piercing, hysterical scream tears through the lobby corridor. Jasmine. She had not left the premises when security threw her out. She had snuck around the perimeter, hiding in the shadowy alcoves of the VIP lobby, desperate to watch my presentation fail. Now she bursts into the open doorway, her heavily sequined crimson dress glittering wildly as she stares at the scene unfolding in front of her. Mom Jasmine shrieks, her voice cracking with pure, unadulterated terror. Dad, what is happening? What are you doing to them? Let them go! Jasmine tries to sprint into the ballroom, but two federal agents immediately step in front of her, blocking her path with their imposing frames. She beats her fists uselessly against their tactical vests, sobbing and screaming. Her carefully crafted socialite existence is collapsing right in front of her eyes. The heavy mahogany doors are now propped wide open, providing a clear, unobstructed view straight through the grand lobby to the exterior glass doors of the Plaza Hotel. The flashing red and blue lights of half a dozen federal vehicles paint the street outside in frantic neon colors. Jasmine turns her head, looking through the glass doors toward the street. Her screams abruptly stop, replaced by a choked, horrified gasp. Standing next to a black unmarked SUV is Connor. Jasmine's husband is wearing his expensive tailored suit, but his hands are cuffed tightly behind his back. Two federal agents are aggressively patting him down, pressing his chest against the hood of the vehicle. He looks through the glass doors, making direct eye contact with his hysterical wife, before an agent places a hand on his head and forces him into the back of the cruiser. Connor was picked up at his wealth management office, attempting to shred physical documents when the raid commenced. The federal sweep is absolute and complete. Jasmine collapses onto the floor of the lobby, her hands tearing at her perfectly styled hair. She wails a loud, ugly sound of total devastation as the agents haul her handcuffed parents past her. Vivian is sobbing uncontrollably, her mascara running down her face in dark streaks. Desmond keeps his head bowed, refusing to look at his daughter as he is marched out into the blinding lights of the waiting police cruisers. I step away from the podium, walking to the edge of the stage. Reginald and Jamal stand on either side of me, their presence a solid, unshakable wall of love and protection. We look out over the grand ballroom, listening to the fading sirens echoing down the city streets. The predators have been removed. The inheritance of trauma has been broken. I take a deep breath of the crisp, cool air, feeling entirely and permanently free. The harsh fluorescent lights of the Federal Detention Center hum with a relentless mechanical buzz, a stark contrast to the crystal chandeliers of the grand ballroom just 12 hours prior. The air smells of industrial bleach and stale coffee. I sit in a rigid metal chair bolted to the concrete floor, separated from the holding room by a thick pane of smudged bulletproof glass. I did not come here to gloat. I came here to sever the final cord. The heavy steel door on the other side of the glass clangs open. A federal guard escorts Vivian and Jasmine into the small visitor booth. The transformation is absolute and unforgiving. Vivian is wearing an oversized drab gray detention uniform, her carefully maintained blonde hair flat and dull, without her expensive salon products. Her face is drawn, the deep lines of age and malice fully visible without her premium cosmetics. Jasmine trails behind her, looking completely hollowed out. Her eyes are swollen and red-rimmed, her hands shaking as she takes a seat beside her mother. They pick up the heavy black receivers on their side of the glass. I pick up mine. Alia, please, Jasmine begs immediately, her voice cracking into a wet, desperate sob that vibrates through the telephone earpiece. You have to help me. Connor's accounts are frozen. The feds locked me out of the house. I do not have access to a single dollar. My credit cards are declining everywhere. You are a senior partner now. You have money. You have those rich new parents. Please just pay for my retainer. Pay for a defense attorney. We are sisters, Aaliyah. We grew up together. You cannot just leave me in here. I look at the woman who spent 22 years reminding me that I was an unwanted stray. I remember the time she poured bleach on my only winter coat because I received a higher grade on a math exam. I remember the cruel, vicious laugh she let out just last night when she demanded that security throw me out of the gala. I let out a slow, genuine laugh. The sound is completely devoid of warmth. You told me just yesterday that I was an ugly, awkward college dropout, Jasmine. I say, my voice perfectly level, transmitting through the phone lines with clinical precision. And I distinctly remember you telling me for my entire childhood that failures do not belong in the Dupree family. Consider me simply taking your advice. You are a failure, Jasmine. You do not belong to me. Jasmine slams her hand against the thick glass, a pathetic, weak gesture before burying her face in her arms, sobbing loudly. Vivian shoves her daughter aside, leaning close to the glass. The sheer venom in Vivian's eyes proves that she has learned absolutely nothing from her catastrophic downfall. You think you are so brilliant, Aaliyah, Vivian sneers, trying to summon the terrifying matriarchal authority that used to make me cower. You think this little revenge tour makes you a hero, but you need to look at yourself. Look at the ruthless, calculating woman sitting in that chair. You would not be this successful, you would not be this strong if I had not made you tough. I forged you. I gave you the fire that burns inside you. You are everything you are today, because I broke you down and forced you to rebuild yourself. You owe your entire backbone to me. I hold the heavy black receiver against my ear, letting the sheer delusion of her gaslighting wash over me. She actually believes her abuse was a gift. She believes her cruelty was mentorship. I lean forward until my face is mere inches from the smudged glass. I am strong in spite of you, Vivian. I say, my words dropping like anvils. You did not forge me. You tried to bury a seed under concrete, and you are angry that I shattered the foundation when I grew. You take credit for my resilience because you have absolutely nothing else left to claim. Vivian opens her mouth to speak, but I do not give her the oxygen. Enjoy your new wardrobe, Mom. I add, my tone dropping into an ice-cold, absolute finality. It is the only thing in your entire life you will not have to steal. I place the receiver gently back onto the metal cradle, severing the audio connection. Vivian is screaming now, her face contorted in rage, pounding both fists against the bulletproof glass. Her mouth is moving frantically, but I cannot hear a single word. I stand up, smooth my trench coat, and turn my back on them. I walk out of the federal precinct, pushing through the heavy double doors into the bright morning sunlight, leaving their silent screaming completely behind me. The dominoes fall with devastating speed over the next 3 weeks. The federal prosecutors do not even need my forensic audit to secure the convictions because the Dupree empire violently turns on itself. Connor cracks after 48 hours in custody, facing federal RICO charges and decades behind bars. Jasmine's husband signs a comprehensive proffer agreement. He turns over every hidden ledger, every offshore routing number, and every encrypted email tied to Desmond's illegal real estate acquisitions. He completely immolates his father-in-law to reduce his own sentence to 5 years in a minimum security facility. Desmond is denied bail a second time. The judge, citing his extensive network of fraudulent shell companies, deems him an extreme flight risk. Without Connor's protection, and with the SEC seizing every remaining liquid asset, Desmond is forced to accept a public defender. He is formally indicted on 32 counts of wire fraud, domestic embezzlement, and identity theft. He is facing 35 years in a federal penitentiary. He will never walk the streets of this city as a free man again. The fallout for Vivian is swift and humiliating. The federal government exercises immediate asset forfeiture. The massive suburban mansion with its manicured lawns and heated swimming pool, the very house where I spent my childhood treated as a domestic servant, is seized by U.S. Marshals. Vivid yellow notices are taped to the grand mahogany front doors. Vivian is officially evicted. The social excommunication is absolute. The elite church congregation she practically ruled completely erases her. The pastor's wife releases a public statement condemning Vivian's actions. The country club revokes her membership. The charity boards she sat on strike her name from their letterheads. She is forced to move into a cheap transient motel on the outskirts of the city, waiting for her own impending trial for the forgery of my adoption papers. Jasmine hits rock bottom with a sickening thud. Completely broke, her husband incarcerated and her parents facing prison, she is evicted from her luxury condominium. She is forced to rent a tiny studio apartment above a noisy laundromat in a neighborhood she used to openly mock. Stripped of her trust fund and her socialite status, Jasmine is forced to get a job. She finds work at a mid-tier retail clothing store, folding sweaters and ringing up customers for minimum wage. Unable to let go of her desperate need for attention, Jasmine attempts one final play. She props her smartphone up on a cheap plastic tripod in her cramped apartment and records a tearful 20-minute video. She cries to the camera, claiming she was an innocent victim of her parents' crimes, claiming she never knew where the money came from, and begging her former followers for financial support. She posts it to her social media accounts, expecting a wave of sympathy. The internet absolutely annihilates her. The video goes viral for all the wrong reasons. Commentators ruthlessly dissect her performance. Former employees from her failed lifestyle brand flood the comment section, sharing horror stories of her demanding them to work without pay while she took lavish vacations. People post screenshots of her past arrogant posts, contrasting them with her current tearful begging. She is labeled a manipulative fraud, entirely cancelled by the digital public square. She is forced to delete all her accounts within 24 hours, retreating into total obscurity. 3 months later, I am sitting in my spacious corner office at Holloway Financial when my assistant brings in the morning mail. Among the corporate briefs is an official envelope from the United States District Court. I slice it open. Inside is a formal letter of resolution and a physical check. It is the first installment of the court-ordered restitution seized directly from the liquidated assets of Desmond's fraudulent shell companies. The amount is staggering, representing the college tuition they stole and the punitive damages for the years of identity theft. I stare at the check for a long time. The numbers printed on the paper represent my suffering. They represent the years I spent sleeping in a cold room above a garage. I reach into my desk drawer, pull out a thick black pen, and flip the check over. I endorse the back of it, making it payable to the Holloway Foundation, specifically allocating the entirety of the funds to a newly established grant program designed to support foster youth transitioning into college. I slide the check into a new envelope and hand it back to my assistant. I refuse to build my life on their dirty money. I am building something entirely new. 6 months pass. The air is thick with the sweet, heavy scent of hickory smoke and barbecue sauce. It is a brilliant Sunday afternoon in late summer, and the sprawling backyard of the Halloway estate is alive with vibrant, joyous energy. A classic 90s R&B playlist bumps smoothly from the outdoor speakers, mingling with the loud, booming laughter of dozens of extended family members. There is no rigid posturing here. There are no silent judgments about designer labels or social standing. There is no quiet, simmering anxiety about who is going to be targeted for humiliation next. There is only the warm, chaotic embrace of genuine family. I am sitting on a plush outdoor sofa under the shade of a massive oak tree. Josephine is sitting to my left barefoot, her elegant legs tucked underneath her, laughing uncontrollably at a story Jamal is telling. My brother is standing near the patio, wildly gesturing with his hands as he dramatically reenacts a minor catastrophe from his last corporate board meeting. Reginald is standing near the massive custom grill, wearing an apron over his polo shirt, expertly flipping ribs and shouting humorous corrections to Jamal's exaggerated story. I lean back into the cushions, taking a slow, deep breath of the warm summer air. I feel grounded. I feel entirely safe. My phone vibrates in the pocket of my sundress. I pull it out, glancing at the glowing screen. A notification pops up indicating a blocked voicemail has been routed to my spam folder. The transcript feature automatically generates the text on my screen. It is from Jasmine. The text is frantic, a rambling, desperate plea, begging for a small loan, begging for me to meet her for coffee, swearing she has changed and needs a second chance. I stare at the words on the screen. A year ago, seeing her name would have triggered a severe spike of anxiety. 6 months ago, it would have sparked a flash of righteous anger. Today, I search my chest and find absolutely nothing. There is no anger, there is no sadness, there is no lingering desire for revenge or closure. There is only profound, complete indifference. I do not listen to the audio. I do not read the rest of the transcript. I press the small red trash can icon, permanently deleting the voicemail from the server. I hold down the side button on the device, powering the phone down completely and slipping it back into my pocket. Aaliyah. I look up. Reginald is walking over to the sofa, wiping his hands on a towel. He is holding a large paper plate piled high with perfectly smoked brisket, macaroni and cheese, and collard greens. He hands the plate down to me, a warm, deep smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. I got the best cut for you, my father says, his voice rumbling with quiet, unconditional love. I take the warm plate from his hands, looking at him, at Josephine, at Jamal, and at the beautiful, loud, chaotic family surrounding me. I smile, a wide, genuine expression that reaches all the way to my eyes. Thank you, Dad, I say. I take a bite of the food, leaning into the warmth of the afternoon sun, surrounded by the people who finally brought me home. The ultimate lesson from this story is that your worth is never defined by the people who refuse to see it, even if those people are your own family. True strength doesn't come from constantly seeking validation from a toxic environment or trying to prove yourself to those who only want to tear you down. Instead, it is born from resilience, independence, and the courage to walk away. You are not the failure they painted you to be. By setting unbreakable boundaries and focusing on your own growth, you can build a beautiful, successful life that speaks for itself. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic family environment to build your own success? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more empowering journeys.